To order, please join us for the flag salute.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Anything that needs to be changed on the agenda?
Nothing needs to be changed on the agenda. I do apologize to the board for my error in not warning last night's meeting, so I do apologize. We were all set, just completely didn't warn it, so I apologize for that.
No worries. Nice unwelcome night off.
JP got to go shopping.
Yeah, well, you're fine.
So would it be okay if I kind of put together this narrative for the TV to just
Yeah.
walk through this and then?
Yep, but first we just, I know there's not, but we gotta ask a question. Anyone here to speak on an issue that's not on tonight's agenda? And the answer is no, since you're all staff.
Okay.
Now go for it.
Thank you, and thank you, board members. Thank you, guys. Thank you to the staff members that are here. So, on behalf of the municipal staff, volunteers, we bring you our first draft. We understand it's been a difficult building budget process this time around. We've spent several months working with department heads, Jess, to go over this to get to the point we're at today. Over the last couple of months, we've met with department heads who have presented their budgets and capital requests. We have a number of important competing priorities, as you all know, some that require major investment and some that must be completed in order to fix our critical infrastructure. Throughout the process, I wanted the board to know that, I've asked heads, department heads and directors to justify their request using a few simple questions. One, is the project additional spending or staff member necessary to maintain our current level of service, or are you proposing to increase our level of service? So I want that to be clear when we go through this process. Number two, what benefit will residents of the town receive from this project or funding request? 3, what are the ongoing or hidden costs behind the project? 4, can we eliminate equipment or downsize our fleet while continuing to provide the same level of service? Can we generate additional revenue without raising taxes? Can we improve efficiency in operations by using technology? And then I want to know where the department would be in 3 to 5 years. So I wanted that kind of information as we move forward. This budget represents no additional services or increased in municipal responsibilities. The budget represents what is necessary to maintain essentially the same level of service that we've been providing. There's one case in the rescue department where we are asking for additional personnel to staff. In the public works department, we have we're asking for an increase in outside engineering and project management services as a result of the bridge building. We've got 2 bridges to build and some other stuff next year. Outside these 2 areas, increases in operating budget represents contractual increases, healthcare increases, and increase of cost of materials. Originally, we had the department heads and directors originally made a request for over $5 million in capital projects. These requests I do not believe represented any excessive spending or disregard for the taxpayer, but I believe they are a real assessment of the needs of the town going forward. However, we need to bring you a budget that is reasonable and responsible to start. So we spent a lot of time, and the director, I appreciate Jess's work, John, Dave, and Taylor. It's been challenging, and I'm sure you're going to hear from department heads that they want more, and I understand why they want more, and it's not that I don't want to do that, but I also know that I have people come in my office regularly that can't pay their taxes and can't pay their water bills or their sewer bill. So we've tried to put this together in that way. In the healthcare, we've seen an increase of 7.4% in our healthcare. Now, we do take advantage this year of a 1.5% contribution from the employees, which is new. Prior to this year, only the AFSCME staff paid that or contributed, and now everybody does. We've seen a 4% increase in dental and a 6% in vision. We've also seen the town's portion of VEMR's increase by 0.25%, with exception to the employee option plan. And then I did a department by department breakdown. One of the things that I wanted to make sure that was clear is that in the debt service, last year, the board approved the bond for, or the voters approved the bond for the new equipment and the East Road bridges. We did factor that debt service into this budget, and we did restore the additional 100,000 general fund transfer that we reduced last year in anticipation of taking that bond on this year. So that is in this, and we'll go through that. And I know that's the board's decision. I just wanted to make sure that I pointed that out. Lastly, we factored in the highway paving line, 332,000, because we are asking the board to consider a $1.5 million loan for paving or a combination of paving and necessary road repairs. The 332 is the payment over the 5 years, and we're proposing that the board have a separate article where people get to vote on those repairs or that paving. And if they vote no, then the 332,000 will be in the budget to make the paving or road repairs, however you decide to do that. So it's been a long budget process. I'm sorry it's been a little delayed getting here. We've got some other issues that were not issues, but responsibilities that finance and myself have been dealing with the TIF. Our 10-year anniversary is now, and we've been asked to do some things that we hadn't known about until now, and we will be going to Friday to Montpelier to make a point. We need to keep our increment at 75%. So we spent a lot of time, both Jess and I, and actually John has helped, making the case that VEPSI should not reduce how much money we have in the TIF. And we will, the staff of VEPSI has recommended we leave it alone now. So we're close, but we want to get final thing Friday. So I apologize. Just want to make sure you knew what we were working on and how this budget came together. And I'm sure you'll have lots of questions along the way, but I thought it'd be important to start it off with a brief overview. So, thank you. And if department heads are mad, I'm sorry, but I wanted to bring you what we thought we could do to start with.
All right. We're still going with clerk and treasurer first.
Thank you. Good afternoon, evening.
Good evening.
Lines that I'd like to talk for a few minutes about. In the revenue section, we're going to reduce the amount of anticipated revenue for recording fees. You can see that the last actual year was $53,000. We have a budget of $70,000. The real estate market is such that we're recording less than we were before. So that's just factoring back to reality. Of course, the year before we had $70,000, so it was reasonable to put that in the 19 budget, but going to the 20 budget, it's reasonable to cut it back some. Then there's one line there that is school contribution for elections, and that's when the school has, if the school has the need for a second vote, we bill them for our services. We don't include that service in our budget, and so there won't be a revenue or an expense unless they have a second vote. And we have to support them in the elections budget. Inside the election budget, it's pretty much same budget as before. There's a little increase in the proposed salaries, and that's because we're spending a lot more time with early voting. And so you can see that the actual for current year is way up, is 63,000, which is more than half of the budget, and we have another vote to go. So we ended up having about 30-day window of people voting. So a little increase in the budget for that. Of course, it's down from last year's budget because last year's fiscal year included, current year budget includes the the midterm election, so we have 2 votes instead of 1. So that's the only big deal inside of the elections. If you have any questions about that? If not, I'll move on to clerk.
I'm curious, when you say you're increasing salaries because of time spent on early voting, how do you track the time throughout the day when people are coming in to do voting?
When we need to bring somebody in.
So you bring extra staff in?
When we need to. We haven't done much of that, but it's getting more and more that we're going to have to. In other words, this last election, we would have people lining up in the lobby. We could have very well have used another person. We didn't. We didn't have it in the budget, so we didn't. But we're going to need to start doing that.
We did set voting booths up in the hallway here, but I don't know what kind of burden it was on the
Right. In the
clerk's
lobby, we had two things that have 4 stations each. And very often they were full. We had an incredible amount, I think over 2 and maybe close to 3,000 votes before the election day. So to track it, in answer to your question, is we didn't do it this time, but we got a need to do it because we had a backlog and we had a need to do it, but we didn't do it. We should be doing that. There's a little reduction in the technical line. It goes down a little bit, actually from 4,000 to 1,000. And basically that depends on how many articles are on the ballot. If you remember last year, we had a ton of articles on the ballot. It was two-sided. Because they have to program the machine that counts the ballots. So the more articles, the more it costs to program it. Moving on to the clerk treasurer section, there's only a couple. The personnel cost does not increase in personnel; it's increase in cost of personnel. And then when you go on to the non-personnel portion, there's a little increase in technology. We need to replace, we have 7 computers in our office. So what we try to do is replace a computer a year. We haven't done the one for this year yet. So we haven't spent the $1,100 in the current year budget, but we will be. And then for next year, we propose to replace another computer. So it's a $100 increase to there. Then we need to replace the desks, the 2 desks at the front. It's time to replace them. They're getting pretty ratty. And then bank fees are up, and we are having more protection in the bank, and there's fees applied. One of the fees is called positive pay. And what you have to do is send a list of your checks to the bank before you send them out, and there's a fee for doing that. But the protection is that if a check comes back that wasn't on the list that we sent them, say somebody creates a fraudulent check from our account, since we didn't send them a check, they aren't cashing that check. We sent them a list of checks, they're not cashing it, and there's a fee for that, and among other fees that have gone up. But if there's a change, that's the only change from prior. We didn't used to have, the schools had it for years. We didn't on the town side have that function. We have been advised that it's a smart thing to do, and it is. It's an insurance policy in a sense. Finally, on to the information technology. Paulette has spelled out in the comment section, Paulette and Jessica have spelled out itemization of everything that makes up this line. We have 60 computers in our system. And so the bulk hours, Paulette told me that when it first came up, the idea of bulk hours rather than paying them for time, she thought it was a bad idea. But what they've done is, they've been calling us and saying, hey, there is a virus on such and such computer, we want to go and fix it. It's like that guy from Windows that calls you and tells you that, only this, we trust these folks because we hire them and they do it. We've had a couple of occasions where they fixed things before we knew it. So we really have a good system. A couple of years ago, I think when I was on the board, we talked to the school about joining forces, and the school came over and looked at our system and said, it's too sophisticated for us. You need to have this kind of help. So we're doing, I think, a good job. And the fellow that, I see him maybe once a week, but they monitor our system offline. There's some other expenses that when we move to the miltonvt.gov, that's a little bit more expensive of a domain registration than the previous one. So everything's listed there. In the communications section, part of that is the Fieldhouse internet access, which is a great idea, but it costs a little bit of money, about $110 a month. Civic Plus is the website hosting for the new website. And that's about it.
So Fieldhouse internet access, is that for staff, public?
Public access right out back there, right? In the new building.
So we're providing Wi-Fi to the Fieldhouse?
That's what I was told.
Is that true, Joe?
It would serve three purposes. It would serve the purpose of the new space that's in the middle there, have that internet access. It would fulfill the potential of the security cameras that are out there that currently aren't connected to Wi-Fi for additional monitoring, and also it could be a hotspot if people are out there with their children playing, for the games. There's a possibility it won't be necessary because one of the other options was trimming the hedges lower so that the line of sight out to the building right now the Wi-Fi port that they added at the back of the police station is blocked by the tall hedge line, and they're going to try cutting that down to 8 feet and see if that line of sight gets that signal out there. But in the absence of that, that would be a 3-year contract with Comcast, so that they would run the coaxial at no charge, and that would be the monthly fee.
And we are scheduled to get the hedge line trimmed. It's already in the works to try it.
There's a meeting room out there now that at least 3 seasons out of the year would enhance it if there was internet access as well. But currently the DVR system could be online, so you can see it on your desktop or, review it whenever you want to do, wherever you want to without standing at that monitor. It's got that capability, but it's just on the Wi-Fi signal.
All right.
Young?
Thank you very much.
Did you want to look at the capital? Sorry. There were a couple items that IT submitted for capital. And yeah, I can.
Okay, good.
I know what it is. So we have 2 servers that are scheduled for replacement upcoming in the next few years. We have one scheduled for FY20 and then one scheduled for FY23. So both of those replacements are included in the 5-year plan at $12,000 each. And then there's also an email archive system proposed, so at a total of $91.24. This is a rough quote that Paulette was able to obtain from the tech group. We've had several public records requests and involving email, and just the cost of a couple of requests would have paid for this email archive system, which would have enabled staff to just search and find emails on our own without having to rely on the tech group.
The server is a new item as well, though.
Replacement.
It's a replacement server.
Right, but
Yep,
new to this year's capital improvement
Correct.
plan.
yep.
And do we have a known schedule as to server replacement?
This is what I have so far for server replacement.
Right,
It's
but I
just
mean, is
these
it gonna
two.
last 5 years?
5
or-
years. 5 years normally.
We also are bringing in the tech group to look at, what's it called?
Cloud services.
Cloud service, with it docking capability instead of having the servers. I think
Yep.
there's a discussion, but that's down the road.
Yeah.
It's not a good idea.
It's worth looking at.
Okay.
We looked at it and
Okay.
we found by the time you add up all the fees for cloud, it's pretty close to the
Close to
same
the
price.
same
Okay,
price.
okay.
Yep. And that's what we've talked about so far, but we want to look into it in more detail because there are other programs that we use that are
We use
also-
Box and things like that we wouldn't need if we did that, so there's some, we're looking at it. And Paulette's gonna schedule that right after the first.
Yep.
But I guess what I'm getting at is, what I hear you saying is every 5 years, we're gonna need a new server-ish.
Yep.
So shouldn't we put $2,500 a year towards that as opposed to a new future? Seems random for something that we know is going to happen.
Right.
You
I
saying
know that,
How much, 2,500 a year?
Yeah, well, whatever the magic number is that you come up
buys
with.
the server at the end of the fifth, or at the 5th year.
Yeah,
Remember, since you have 3, you're really replacing one. When you get into that cycle, you replace
Yeah, it's every
one
2 or
other
3
year.
years that we're replacing.
right. But it should be a standing item.
Correct. Yep. We've been able to get longer life out of our servers by the tech group maintaining them. And also, we've purchased extended warranties in that this server that needs to be replaced, I believe we're at the end of that. The opportunity to continue extending the warranty will not be available to us, given the age of the server.
Okay.
Does the tech group service all town-owned computers? Every single one of them?
Yep,
All 60-something?
yep. They also do the libraries now.
Okay. And does the fees that we pay to the tech service include fees for virus protection and
Yes.
things of that nature
Yep.
on all 60 computers?
Mhm.
Is that like a blanket type thing, or is it so many?
I believe we have a
Or
certain number
individual.
I believe we have a certain number of licenses.
Mm-hmm.
And then we buy bulk licenses as we need to add on.
And the reason I bring that up is these computers are about a year old now, because we bought them around budget time last year. And the virus protection thing flashed today, saying it's expired.
And those
I figured I'd
are
ask.
not, yeah, those laptops are not covered, as part of our contract with the tech group.
That's what I just asked you.
The,
If they cover
well, town
all,
computers are, these laptops were not, you guys made that decision, I believe, when you purchased them to not.
we got the first year included with the computer.
Right, the
We'll have to add
factory,
them.
from the factory, right.
We'd have to add
So we'd
them.
have to add them to the
Well,
plan
that's-
now.
That's something that you might want to, I
I
don't
can
know,
make a
talk to you
note
or
of it.
somebody, whoever, but,
Yep, Paulette.
because it did
we can talk
flash
to
on the
Paulette
screen
about
today
it.
that the virus protection is expired, and all 5 of the computers we bought would be in the same boat.
Okay,
You know, the viruses are out there, and the malware and all that stuff.
okay.
All right.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. Yeah,
Who's next?
Don, do you want to do yours next, or do you want to have
Let
these
those guys go. We'll do ours at the end.
Okay. I'm Josh Drive, no, I'm kidding.
May not be
Do you
good
guys wanna
mood
go
to make
first?
any money, I think.
Okay.
That's okay.
Good evening.
You can blow it up. I have it in front of me, I believe.
Okay.
Um,
No,
So,
you're fine. So the fire revenue, I budgeted in based on historical averages. The 57, excuse me, is the scheduled transfer in to cover the tower truck debt service. So,
in the building, too, right?
no, not this one. This is just the tower truck. Okay, so
So the only.
How many years are left on the tower truck?
2024.
paid off in '24, FY '24.
Yeah.
The building as well, fire station as well.
Which is 12,000.
Well, that's just
Well,
the
it's
impact fee
more.
course. It's 50 some odd
It's,
thousand.
yeah,
So the only increase in the fire department budget, overall, there's a reduction in it. But the only increase was the temporary salaries, which we bumped up to 1,764 was the increase on that. We put on a number of firefighters. We're almost fully staffed at this point. We're up to 39 of the 40 allotted firefighters. There was a reduction. If you see history, we were 16, 17, and 18 were 80, 91. 91 was the actual on the budget. Since then, our administrator was taking out of our budget and put into the public safety budget and is paid out of the public safety budget. So there was a decrease there. My salary was added into the temporary salaries here. Right now, our first quarter pay was $18,101. I don't have a number yet. Pay will go out at the end of the month here on where we'll be at. But we should be able to stay within, close to that range at this point. Everything else in the budget, we kept the same as last year. There was a reduction. There was a reduction in the yes, you, excuse me. Is it technological or, I can't see it in my eyes.
technical, yep, it
Technical,
was
which is
reduction in
dispatch.
technical for dispatch.
$9,750 reduction in dispatch, which was part of the moving to St. Albans. $1,000 reduction in the fire prevention. We pulled out just because of past spending, we've been lower than we needed for fire prevention. So overall, the overall budget, I think, was a drop to $8,850 for the fire department.
Now look at capital for fire.
Capital.
Yep. So you'll see a bunch of new lines in here for the fire department. Chris was able to send me a schedule of all of their equipment and replacements of each truck. So I have that added in here with notes. Most of these stretch beyond the 5-year plan, but my plan is to put these into the Planet software that we use for our capital reporting so that there is history saved and a schedule maintained somewhere. So there's no expense associated with all of this stuff for this year. It's just informational only. So the only capital item that's in here is the $10,000 for the replacement of engine 5 that we had included last year per your request, just as an annual savings. There is, coming out of the fire rescue reserve, we have SCBA, and I believe this is two, is it two?
That was supposed, that's saving for 2020.
So it's staying in the
What we
reserve.
talked
Yeah.
about during
Yep.
that. Yeah. So it'll stay in there, but set aside.
Yep.
Scheduled up through there.
Yep. And then we also, the ATV is in here, but is still will only be purchased if fully funded by grant or other source. But we kept that in because it doesn't look like that will happen this year as originally planned.
Okay.
And the new truck is scheduled to be here in July? The one that-
May 8th, I think, is the date it's supposed to,
To Vermont.
to Vermont, and then
New Hampshire.
it'll be fit up in New Hampshire for about probably 3 or 4 weeks in New Hampshire, so,
We're hoping to have it here for July.
for July, hopefully before the parade. See.
You want to make any predictions?
No. No. I've seen fire trucks.
The only advantage we have is they built a new facility, so.
That's good.
They're-
Pumpers go one way and aerial devices.
Their
go
build out
another.
from once they get all the components at the factory is 5 weeks on the truck.
And the chair seems to recall what he wants for a date, so if you tell him July 1st, he'll be looking in March. That's why I don't pick dates anymore.
All right.
Okay.
How is that, so if we do go to St. Albans, and there's a reduction in that cost, how is that put across the board as a certain percentage?
It's actually in here, isn't it, Jess?
Is it, but what, like, how's the percentage, does the percentage of the savings go to police and then the percentage of the savings?
So currently, Chris, the way dispatch is billed is 50% to police, 25% to fire, 25% to rescue. So when we built this budget, we took into consideration the number we were quoted
Mhm.
and appropriated as according to that
That's
schedule.
percentages.
What was the FY18 budget versus,
Total was 239 versus a proposed 224 for FY20.
right, but that's, the 239 is the actual,
Oh, sorry. I would have to pull reports to get that. I don't have the budget in this file,
okay.
but I can get that for you.
Yeah, I think with it, everybody going forward, it'd be nice to know what the difference between
Yep.
their projection and the actual were.
Do you want it just for FY18 or do you want it for all years that are in this?
Yeah, and if it's easy to do, go back to FY16 since we've got that.
Okay.
I assume you spent 239,000 in FY18, and I assume your budget was more than that. I'm just curious as to what number that is.
Yep. I can add that into these spreadsheets and resend the file. I can hide the columns so that we're not looking at everything all at once, but
Yeah.
they'll be in there if you want to
Yeah,
see
yeah,
it.
that works. Yeah.
My whole sheet, my proposal was 239.5, so.
See, you were off by $296.55, so
We were.
apparently you need to sharpen your pencil this year.
It's pretty good.
All right.
Okay.
Anyone have any fire questions? Do we know yet, in general, with the dispatch move, any costs?
So we're kind of still gaming that out, but it'll be, you're a little more versed on the actual labor we'll need to move.
So if we can come to an agreement on the equipment that's down in Colchester, is really the big question on the transmitter. On the labor side, to move, it's quoted $1,000 to $1,200 to move that equipment. We've already been testing the equipment. It tested fine. We did test homes, we did spot checks around town. It seems to be going well.
Okay, good. Any questions for fire? Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Good night.
Thank you.
I do have a question on rescue.
Yeah, he's gonna do that.
He's gonna do that
Yeah, it's coming up
after.
next. We made him go last so you could ask lots of questions.
Yeah, there ain't got nobody left.
I know.
All right, so police revenue, we've budgeted for just under an $18,000 increase over the prior year, and that is just using historical averages again. And it does include the SRO reimbursement, which we know what the amount of that will be for the next 3 years, 2 years, 3 years. Right.
So where are we in staffing at this point?
We are full staff. 17, that includes myself, and 1 full-time support staff and about 12-hour a week part-time employee.
$12 hours a week, that's for admin stuff?
Yes, mostly scanning, keeping files together.
All right, you want to walk us through everything?
Sure. So I guess the first thing I'll point out is the shift differential. The increase is based on last year's actual dollars spent. And contractually, that hasn't changed in several years. So that's an accurate reflection of the true cost was last year. Moving down to overtime. The overtime is based on last year's actual amount spent and the 3% increase that was agreed upon in the union contract. And this year we have a mandate by the state to increase our training hours from 25 to 30 hours. They added several new requirements, one of which is 4 hours of use of force training, which is control and restraint and handcuffing. To train 17 officers requires 2 days of separate training. It's not an easy task. We use in-house instructors to keep the cost down, but that's another mandate from the state. Aside from mandatory domestic violence training to mental health training to firearms training, first aid, CPR, those are all mandated trainings each year. There's really no way to reduce the cost. It's the cost of doing business.
All those occur during overtime?
No, we do all, as much as possible to schedule well in advance to cut down on the overtime costs. And I'll give you an example. We just did a 2 days of control and restraint, and we spread that over a 2-month period so we could get people coming off shift or people going on shift, so they didn't have to come in on their days off to pay additional overtime. But there is a cost there. We try to reduce the cost by getting 2 instructors on staff, but the 4 hours is the 4 hours that's required, so. So that's the overtime. The contract salaries, I increased that by $10,000. That's to reflect the Sharp and Start grant that we receive each month for 40 hours of aggressive driving enforcement and drug driving and drunk driving enforcement, and our drug recognition expert for being called out. So if we simply just use the grant money that's available, that's roughly $10,000 that's paid out of that contract salaries that we recoup through those grants. So that's it's a funding source that we've used. And what I should have really started off with is what we're seeing as a trend in law enforcement in the last 2 years is drug driving is at roughly 25% of our driving under the influence arrest compared to alcohol. 5 years ago, I would say we may have gotten 1 or 2 a year, but now it's leaning on 25 to 27% over the last 2 years. And this year has been a challenge for us as far as mental health calls for service. In 2017, we had 53 calls that were mental health related. This year, we're already at 157. I think rescue obviously is seeing the effects of that as well with us. So I should have thrown some of these numbers out to you. Drug overdose for 2018, we are at 10. For the entire year in 2017, we had 7. But calls for service were probably going to end close to where we were last year. We're handling 9,500 incidents a year now as a police department. So, but I apologize, I should have said that earlier. The next item I would point out is the technical item, and that is a reduction overall because of the savings that we would save by switching from Colchester Dispatch to Central Dispatch. And I don't know if Taylor's going to touch on this, but the saving is actually higher when you take into real numbers on what the proposal was from Colchester. We're looking at a $50,000 to $52,000 savings by just switching to Central Dispatch. But I'm confident that they can meet our needs and there's not going to be any radio issues in town.
That 50 to 52,000, is that after labor to move and equipment that we are going to need for it, or is that just?
So equipment, if we can get an understanding and MOU with Colchester, equipment purchases out shouldn't be anything with the exception of, I'm told, maybe a $100 or $200 antenna. Labor is $1,000 to $1,200 to move the equipment. Long term, but we can get to the long term when we talk about capital. So I don't know if there's any questions on dispatch, but the next item where I'm asking for an increase is in cruiser maintenance. And it's strictly, again, based on actual costs that we occurred in FY 2018.
How much did your cruiser maintenance increase from last year, Chief?
2,000.
And I'm gonna make another comment, that's only 2,000?
Correct.
Because it's my understanding you're only gonna get one car this year versus two?
That's my plan. It's not his. I mean,
Okay, well,
that's
I'm
what we
just-
have in the
just-
capital, yeah.
Okay, I'm just making a
Yeah.
point, because when I was on a job, our cruiser maintenance went up drastically when we had high mileage cars, to the extent that sometimes we had to deadline them and sat there for months. I'm just curious if that's enough for a cruiser. We want to have our cars safe. If we go down to one car versus two, that's not my issue, right? My thing is make sure we've got safe cars.
Right, and that's a decision, and that's something we talked about today. I understand there's some tough decisions to be made. That number reflects with my request of 2 new cars. And I'm prepared to show you the mileage that we have currently on our cars and what we anticipate in 2020 to have up for mileage on cars. And you are correct, we are going to have an aging fleet because we only purchased 1 car in FY19 in this year's budget, which I was totally in agreement with. But in FY 2020, I will show you that we have an aging, by 2020, we're going to have an aging fleet with several cars with over 85,000 miles, so.
So we're gonna address some of the maintenance costs. We have a mechanic at the highway who's been doing, hasn't been doing police.
That'll help.
He hasn't been doing police to date, but he's been
So-
working on highway and fire.
If we're gonna talk mileage, I'd like to see some history on what the mileage has been on cars when we traded them in. Because honestly, I can remember sitting here on a select board when the person in your seat was complaining because the cars were 110, 120,000 miles on them when we were trading them in. And now we're complaining cars are 85,000 miles trading them in. So it seems like we want newer and newer and newer cars as time goes by.
No, if I misspoke on that, I'm not saying we're trading cars in at 85,000. I'm just saying that several of the cars next in 2020 are gonna have over 85,000, and at least 3 of the cars are gonna have over 110,000 miles. That's, but I'm just saying the aging cars is an issue. I mean, miles on a police car are,
Costly.
yes.
Well, miles on a police car are hard miles, much, much more than a POV, privately owned vehicle. Yes, they're higher speed, quicker stopping than a POV, harder stopping because of the speed, emergency runs, idling, things of that nature. So that's my concern, is to make sure that our maintenance budget is gonna be able to control the loss of that second cruiser. Now, Don has just said that the town mechanic is most likely.
We're working toward that. We talked about that today.
Doing PM, preventive maintenance on the cruisers, which will certainly help. But we gotta have safe cars out there. $2,000 I thought was, that was not gonna cut it. I mean, you can eat that up in a couple of brake jobs.
We just had 5 brake jobs, right?
Yeah, and they're $1,200 apiece.
Yeah, I just did brakes on one of my daughter's car much less, and, they're not cheap. So, I just thought 2,000 was a little low. But I'm not one to try to add money to a budget, you know that. I'm just the opposite, but.
Right, and all I can say
Make sure
with
that the
that,
cruisers are safe, that's
and
fine.
all I can say with that is that was a number that I proposed based on historical numbers and replacing 2 cars, but I don't know if there's any other questions about vehicle maintenance, but I can go on to the next one that I have highlighted. So the interesting thing is, I point you to the koozie bill, and it's a decrease this year, so over the past 3 years, FY18, FY19, and the proposed FY 2020, it's either decreased or maintained status quo. I mean, it's been that amount since the last increase we saw was after FY 17.
Sorry, can we back up to the cruisers for just 1 second? Something I probably should know the answer to, but I don't. Are specific officers assigned to specific cars?
Correct. Majority of the time. We do that because we've found historically that officers who were assigned equipment in general take better care of vehicle, radios, any equipment that's issued, and it's accountability. We know if there's a car that's dirty or having maintenance issues, just keeps a better handle on things.
I'm probably not going to describe this well, but is it possible to get even a weekly schedule with how these cars would be used based on like what the officer's work schedule would be? Because we've got, 10 cars listed here? You know, some cars on the road more than others in a normal rotation. I'm assuming some are assigned to sergeants or something that wouldn't be on the road all the time.
Correct. So I'm not sure what list that you're looking at as far as cars.
I just did the mileage, the one you shared with me on mileage.
Is it this one for
Yes.
historic?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, so one of the cars is assigned for my take-home car. One of the cars is assigned for the K-9 unit. And one of the cars, the car at the bottom, the Ford Interceptor, is the detective black unmarked car. And the 2011 Tahoe is a second detective's car because we have two detectives, and it's also used as a training car, court car, really a car to keep mileage off what I would say the primary fleet vehicles are that are driven by patrol each day. So when it comes down to it, there's 6 cars that are, I would say, that are in the fleet for strictly patrol use, responding to emergencies, responding to calls, with a uniformed police officer in it. But to answer your question as far as scheduling, I mean, we do a really good job with tracking mileage and where mileage is either not racking up on vehicles or too much mileage and we need to slow it down because we need to extend the life of that car so we can make it to the schedule. But the list that you're looking at is really, Sergeant Philbrook does an excellent job with tracking mileage on a monthly basis, and he can be within a few hundred miles per month on driving habits and officers. And that's another reason we have some officers who put a lot of miles patrolling, and we have other officers that may not put as many miles on. But I don't know if that answers your question, but like the SRO, she takes a vehicle that's really just a vehicle that's available to her. She doesn't have an assigned car, so it could be a different car every day. So.
Okay.
So, what was I?
Kusi.
Kuzi. I don't know if there's any questions on the Kuzi billing system, but I have, I'm sure, I think most of you are familiar with how they do the breakdown. It's based on population. It's a formula that they've been using for a number of years. They're actually showing a population decrease for this year for Milton. I'm not sure where they get the numbers, but it's a decrease, so. And an extra $500 for training requirements because of the increase in training and sending people for travel. General supplies, again, is based on the average or the actual amount that was spent in FY18. Technology, we are slated for 3 new computers in the office. What we've been doing in the last few years is coming up with a schedule that reflects on when they actually need to be replaced. But next year we're scheduled for 2 or 3. This year we did 2. Professional development, that's the training, and that's the training requirements that are placed upon us. We really are looking at it. We are looking to do some joint training with fire and rescue on our emergency response throughout the town. That's something Taylor and I have been working, and my staff have been working with Taylor a lot over the past few months. We just met with the superintendent of schools to come up with some type of training and plan moving forward. So.
The decrease in group health insurance is related to the contribution that's going to be made by,
I believe it's because we have a member that's taking the buyout.
Buyout.
He's being covered under his wife's plan.
that's not all of it.
Both.
Both, it's both.
Both changes in buyout and the group.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
So I guess that wasn't clear to me. You're taking the insurance costs, and instead of including the revenue, the payroll deduction as revenue, you're taking it as a deduction
Savings
as
and,
expense?
right. That's the way we're doing it now.
That's the way Ask Me has been doing it all along.
Yep.
Would it make sense to do it the way Ken's talking?
It would make sense. I'm not sure the logistics of it within the system, in our payroll system.
Can we put in the notes what the actual cost of the insurance was? Is that possible?
Yep, so there's actually a tab in here, let's see, called benefit premiums. And this shows what each, so health, dental, vision, and VEMR's. It shows what the annual cost is for each level of coverage. And it was a hidden sheet. I hid it before I sent it to you guys, I think. I can unhide that in the next version.
Would you say the increase in dental was, what percentage?
6%. Yep. And these increases are all confirmed at this point. We've gotten information back from each carrier to confirm that these percentages are.
But the 7.4% increase obviously is separate from the employee contribution.
Correct.
It's a standalone.
Yes. Yep.
It's sad that 7.4% increase seems kind of low.
Compared to some others we
Compared,
looked
yeah.
at.
Yeah.
We're on Cigna, is it?
We're at Cigna here. We have hope though, because next year there's different plans being offered. We got some notice of association-type plans that used to exist, now are being revitalized.
Yeah. The Chambers got one.
Chambers are doing that, so we're looking at, right now,
You gotta look at the benefits though. We looked at switching and it
it wasn't worth it.
wasn't comparable. I mean, it was cheaper, but
Yeah.
the benefits were
coverage
not
isn't.
nearly the same.
Mhm.
So,
What do you guys have?
Yeah, Blue Cross.
Yeah.
We actually only got a 2.4% increase.
wow.
Surprising.
Okay.
Right, capital. So for PD, there are two capital items for FY '20. I'll just rattle them off and then you can talk about them individually. So we have, there was a request for 2 cruisers, and through our meetings, we've reduced that to 1 cruiser replacement. And then there's also the ongoing project of radio replacement. So next year, we've got 15.4 in for the replacement of 4 radios.
So what you're seeing on the new is the repeater system. So I'm not sure if Taylor's going to touch, but researching this move to Central, we've been told that moving forward, we're going to have to consider replacing repeaters for police, fire, and rescue. Police is 2 to 3 years out. I would say rescue, I'm being told fire is actually, should be considered sooner rather than later, because no one can actually tell me how old that system is up there, with the exception of it's old. And he hasn't been able to get up there because of the weather to actually check what the date is. But I haven't been able to find anything historically to say when that system was actually changed or upgraded. But I think that needs to be on everyone's radar, because it was 6 months ago, I went to the town manager and said, I'm being told our repeater system is failing. Come to find out, it was a wire that was broken underground that water got in and it froze. So, but that's when I became aware of the system is aging.
So the repeater is not a result of any move?
No.
Whether we stayed in Colchester or went there?
Regardless
we
if
had to
we,
replace
yeah,
these.
regardless if we decide to stay or go regionalized, it's something we're gonna have to consider upgrading on all public safety fronts. Because the average life expectancy of a repeater is 5 to 7 years. Police is at that 7 years. Fire and rescue, I'm told, is at least in the 10-year range. I don't know if...
I think the fire is 95.
That sounds right, because I'm being told that they have 2 mobile radios stacked on top of each other, and that's what they're operating on, which...
And that is
so-
basically a repeater.
Correct,
Yep.
but in the 90s, that was okay to do, and
And then
Must be
we-
still okay to do. We're doing it in 2018?
And then we separated, obviously fire and rescue used
Switched
to
to,
be
yeah,
on the same
frequency.
frequency. Then we separated in, right around 2000, 99, 2000. And then rescue got some repeater radios as part of a grant. So you're talking sometime between 2000 and 2005.
yes. Yeah, because you weren't part of the VCOM grant in 2007. I think it was 2007. And again, I know we touched a lot on the cruiser replacement. I'm making you aware, obviously you have the sheet with the estimated miles a year from now on what the estimated mileage is going to be on each cruiser. The reason you're looking at 6 is those are the ones I consider as primary patrol vehicles. And if we go with the 1 replacement, that second car that doesn't get replaced in 2020 is going to have roughly 130,000 miles on it. So I just want to point that out. So in 2020, we will have 3 cars with over 100,000 miles on them at this point.
What mileage do the vehicle warranties go to?
Powertrain, and that's on I think actually on all of them now, powertrain's 100,000.
If you have monthly mileage, I'd like to see that for the vehicles.
I'm prepared to show you tonight if you want to see what the cars had a year ago. compared to what they have today, if that helps.
I'd like to see the usage pattern of them.
Okay.
This is a third different way I've asked for the data, so I'd just like to see something.
So you want monthly usage, right? And the officers assigned to each vehicle, schedule like that, okay?
Whatever you got.
Yep. I've got some notes, we can talk about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any other,
On police? I would like,
Okay.
and I know I'm gonna get a lot of crap for this,
Yeah.
but the contracts still bug me. So, to hopefully put it to bed, can you take the last contract the police worked and show me the revenue versus the expense we incurred? Maybe that will get through my head why this is a good thing. I'm looking at a large expense for contracts.
You're, Sharp and those,
I think he's talking about the special projects, right? Like bridge
anything
contract?
that's in the contract.
The contract where
Salary
the
line.
officers are getting paid outside of the normal rotation.
Yep.
I don't care which one you pick, just
Okay,
a specific project we worked on,
yep,
what we got paid, and what we paid out.
okay.
I've got one question for the contract side, being, what should the rate for the use of town's equipment be? That's our side of the house, to set that rate, but we should have it based on the actual impact. Whatever it is, $5 an hour now, seems very low, considering that, you know, like JP was talking about, vehicles are going to be idling probably at most of these contracted events, and the wear and tear on that, and the wear and tear on the capital equipment, the radios and that sort of thing, on the vehicle seems to me is probably more than $5 an hour if they're sitting out there for 4, 5, 10 plus hours. That barely covers gas, in my opinion. So I think it should be a significantly higher rate than it is, but we need an idea from you guys. And again, that's the way I understand it, that's for the board to decide what that rate's going to be. Last year, or FY '18, weren't we down for a majority of the year? Weren't we down at least one officer, or no? I think with the timing of getting into the academy and stuff, we were short at least one.
Yes, for part of the budget, so I'm thinking the number would be 5 to 5.5 months. It was when Brett retired and when Sam came on.
Okay.
So I think it was roughly 5 or 6 months.
That you only had 16 to include you.
Right.
Yeah, if we can just determine that number, because I assume if you're down an officer, that means that overtime is probably going to increase as a result of that, versus if you're at full-time staffing, one can assume that it's probably not going to be a heavy overtime year.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, since July 1st, we've been tracking every hour of overtime and where it goes, and I'm happy to share those documents with you. It might need a little bit of explanation on the numbers, but I think it's going to be clear to you where the hours of overtime are paid.
Yep.
And I did that for myself internally to see if there was anything that we could do, but, and that was over a 6-month period, so.
And to Darren's point on the car cost, according to the capital budget, the cruiser itself is $47,000 roughly. We're replacing them every 3 to 4 years. You take $47,000 divided by a 3-year cycle, 2,080 hours that it was operating, so that's no overtime. The car itself is $7.50 an hour.
Yeah.
Before you put any gas in it, before you wear and tear, I mean,
Yep.
it's just the capital replacement cost.
Just sitting in the parking lot.
Yeah. So we're low for sure.
Yeah, to me, to be honest with you, this figure should probably be around $20 an hour. And my gut tells me that plenty of the contractors or people that use that service would pay that rate. And then I think some of them would say, nope, we'll shop around, and that's fine. Because that means less of an impact on the equipment. It might be unfortunate for the particular officer that's hoping for extra money. I think there should be a different rate for town coverage for the school and that sort of thing, because the town and the school, if you will, via the residents, are already paying for the cost of the cruiser, but when you're sitting out on the interstate or perhaps in a different town, they are not paying for the true costs of the vehicles or equipment. And I think we really, and again, it's on us, but we just need a good recommendation as to what that rate should be to reflect the impact on the budget.
So we're strictly looking at external cost to do a detail, say, on the interstate. But I just want to say that when we do Sharp and Start, we charge mileage for those details. And that's part of the agreement, is there's some type of in-kind cost with that. But we just recently, I asked the question, can we charge for mileage? And they're like, yes. So it's something that we've started doing a few months ago.
For those two
For
particular.
those,
yeah.
because they occur in town.
Yep.
It's increased protection and coverage for patrol hours in town, covered by Governor's Highway Safety.
Right. Yep. And there, for the most part, you are moving.
Right.
So, mileage makes sense, but if you're sitting on the interstate, mileage obviously wouldn't make sense in that case.
Yeah, I mean, we can work on a number, and I haven't a thought in my mind on how we can come to that, but I hear you.
Yep. I mean, because you need the radio, you need the computer, you need all of those things. You need all of the weapons for the officer. It's a package deal, but $5 an hour for that doesn't even cover one portion of it. What other questions we got?
I just want to say thank you to Steve. I mean, we spent a lot of time going back and forth. I mean, Steve talked about mental health, and I know firsthand that that's a challenge that they're facing. And he had proposed money to bring in a mental health professional. We just, at this point, I just couldn't go forward with it based on the numbers. But
Right.
I just want to thank you. I do understand and recognize it's a very serious situation. And I know you're dealing with it every day, but again, with the budgets that we're looking at, I couldn't move that $80,000 forward.
Do you have anybody that you contact now, Howard Center, or somebody, when you have a situation that would be an hourly type of situation, or?
Yes, it's extremely difficult.
I'm sure the timing and.
No, it's extremely difficult because the current mental health laws that we have really limits what we can and can't do with an individual. What we're seeing a lot of is people who don't meet that criteria for an immediate exam. But to answer your question, we do have Howard Mental Health available to us. But normally when we call them, they say, can you bring them down to the ER? And that's when rescue, we use our negotiation skills to get them to go, so.
Yeah, and one of the things I learned this summer, meeting with police chiefs around the state, there are a number of agencies doing this, embedding part-time or full-time mental health professional.
Absolutely.
And what they're seeing is a decline in their services because the person is getting care, the first call, not call 20. You know, so I understand it. It just, is it on the taxpayers of Milton to provide that, or the state or wherever? But again, we're paying, taxpayers here are paying for that because we're paying the police to go there 4 or 5. Then we're paying rescue to transport, and
Okay, so overall would be a cost,
It-
could there be a cost?
it could be,
savings,
exactly.
or
It's,
at least some
we are
cost
going to
there?
spend a lot more time looking into it, but I just want to recognize the effort and let the board be, you know, make the board aware of that. So thank you.
And I would just, I've said this before, and I always say it at budget season, but the more data that we have throughout the year as opposed to heaping it on to us when we're gunning for pennies, is beneficial. I mean, obviously, you're being hit hard by the impact of mental health, but you can, per call, you can actually determine how much that is affecting the budget, right? You said it was, what, 52 in 2017 or something?
Yeah, 53, and it's 157 currently.
Right, so I mean, you can look at your call volume, divide that by your budget, and figure out the actual dollar amount that the increase in mental health, then the other category of drug overdoses is affecting each of the services in the town. And if we know that on a monthly basis, and we're talking about just a stat, not a report, 20-page detailed report, but just numbers of the types of calls and the trends that you're seeing, it helps us make decisions. Because maybe we would say that $80,000 investment in a mental health person makes sense and is actually going to save money over the long run, or make less of an impact on rescue, which is already impact enough. Or maybe would say, good luck getting that. There's no way we could do that. But the more information that we have on it, the better we have to make the
And I actually put
decision.
that on my calendar, so the 15th of each month, unless you want it the 1st of each month to send a report, I vet it through Taylor, and that's on my calendar each month. If you're not seeing the report style that you're looking for, then please communicate. I'm more than willing to share or come and talk about what we're faced with.
Yep.
I can tell you from the last 5 years of law enforcement, it's been difficult for us because we're mental health workers, we're social workers, and that's not what I started doing almost 30 years ago. So
Right.
it's changed.
It's a lot more clear cut
Yeah, it was.
started.
Exactly, but I
Yeah.
don't want to hold you folks up anymore. Thank you.
Any more questions for them?
Thank you. Thank you,
All right.
Steve.
Thank you.
Thanks. Rescue?
You want to do admin first?
Yeah, and just Darren, on that data point, your point about the data, I think we had started giving some quarterlies, but one of the things Steve and I had talked about, kind of committing to in the new year, was doing that more often, and definitely giving you narrative, highlighting things that we see that have stood out for that month or that group, that period. So
Yep.
that's something we'll definitely start providing more.
Taylor, do you want to do animal control first?
Animal control.
Okay. Okay.
So, yeah, no
Completely
changes
level
here.
funded.
No changes here. You'll see, last year we were just about on par with what we had projected, and I don't really, unless you see any change in animal calls, Steve, I don't see any flowing through my office. So,
Just curiosity question, why didn't we change the revenue here? We seem to be keying off historicals and everything else. But
Yeah.
You look back and
So this, Taylor and I have been talking about the fees and how things are tracked. We currently have a form that gets filled out that's not super user-friendly. And we think that there might be mischarging here and there of fees. There's just some confusion. There's three different people filling out the same form.
sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
So we've been talking about that and trying to work towards developing a system that's a little bit more.
Who are the three besides, obviously one's the animal control officer?
Yep, police officer and then the pound keeper.
So those, you could have 3 people touch that on one call, basically, for a dog, just depending on how it goes down.
Okay.
So our plan is kind of to standardize that and then kind of get a better baseline of what actually we should be seeing. Because right now, honestly, that the legacy form is, I couldn't look at one very easily and tell you, oh, well, that was mischarged, or that person should have been charged this, and we definitely collected it. So.
The rings of the Pentagon?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Okay.
All right.
We haven't had any issues with commentary from animal control personnel on Facebook or anything?
No,
Okay.
that has been resolved.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, public safety admin.
Yeah, so any discretion, no discretionary changes here. The results of the changes are just based on salary and benefit increases. And that part-time salary includes Steve Burke at the fire department and rescue department, who handles maintenance and operations during the week. He's been there for a while, obviously, and then Mary Thompson. And I asked this question today. The group health insurance, the 1.45% is basically, like you said, Darren, the increase minus the increase in insurance costs minus the contribution, the employee contribution. That's the net result.
Okay.
And then if you're wondering, just in terms of actual fiscal 19 averages, that postage number, yes, it's only 235 now, but there's projects that happen in the spring that will bring that back up. So.
Okay.
All right. So moving to rescue. So this is the request for some larger changes here. Oh, do you want to do fees first?
Sure.
Yeah.
So rescue fees, we have seen quite an increase in the fees that CAG is collecting. We've also been working with them to stay on top of following up on aged receivables. And we are probably going to be bringing to you another fee update. Taylor and I have that on our radar to look at for January is when we usually do it. So there is an increase in rescue fees just based on what we've been collecting through CAG.
And that's probably the result. We do collections and we've done aging and we've done a lot of stuff in the last couple of years. And call volume, of course, is continuing to rise. There's a lot of things that kind of go into that, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so as we get down here, let me first say they just went out on call 892. The historical record was 873. And kind of the moving 3-year average is around 850. So it is the 11th, and I would expect they'll break 900 by, probably the end of the weekend and be off to the races. So Like a lot of services, rescue's facing increased requests for services, and I think for me that has always been in the last 6 years a result of aging populations in Vermont. I mean, everyone knows it is one of the oldest. We are one of the, mean average oldest states in the country. So having said that, this request asks to kind of upgrade 2 part-time employees to full-time employees. Since 2014, Don? I was here in 2014. Rescue has had 2 part-time employees, and basically the way that's worked is they split up, over the course of the 5 weekdays, Monday through Friday, 1 shift each, and that's supplemented by a volunteer. And I think what we're kind of finding is it's just not enough. What I'm finding is it's just not enough. There's a lot to do, and it's a complex operation, and it gets more complex by the year. If you took a look at just the protocols that an EMT has to follow to treat a patient from 15 years ago to now, you're going to see like 100 extra pages in the book. So the job itself gets more complicated, and the administration of the program gets more complicated. And so we find both that you definitely need professional help to manage it efficiently and to keep it effective, and you need that help to make it a place where people come and want to volunteer. So the historical request for volunteers has always been 12 hours a week, well, since my knowledge, 12 hours a week and 12 hours every weekend. So if you kind of look at that and figure you have to basically fill 1,400 hours a month in time with volunteers, you need a lot of volunteers to get to that point. And the busiest times and the most difficult times to find volunteers are daytime, Monday through Friday, and Saturday day and Saturday night. And so the proposal here is the part-time employees are currently covering basically 4 out of those 6 days, but it still leaves you struggling to ensure that you're in service those other 2 days. Those employees would continue some of their responsibilities that they have now and expand that with their additional time there. They handle things like training programs. The state has recently dropped a mandate that we credential all the volunteers and staff every year, so that requires a lot of work. And they also handle things like ordering supplies, ensuring medications are up to date, stuff like that. So that's the big increase. Just the way this sheet is set up, it pulls over into part-time salaries, right? So it just hasn't shown in regular salaries yet, but that change is reflective of this request. As well, if this were to happen, I project, knowing the internal staff who would apply, that there would be 2 buyouts instead of healthcare people electing to take the healthcare. So that's basically that's what's reflected up here. Other than that, operating costs aren't really, we don't see a huge change in that at this point. So everything else is level funded.
So you're looking to take your 2 of your, I use the word per diem because I think that's what you call them.
Sure. Yeah, that's
you're looking to take 2 of your per diem staff members, which
Yep.
are part-time.
Yep.
And make those 2 per diem full-time.
Yeah, correct.
And once they become a full-time employee, we now have 2 full-time benefit packages to pay. But if I heard you correctly, you're telling me that you think those 2 are gonna be buyouts?
Correct. Yep.
So you're still predicting a 1.45% decrease in health insurance?
Yeah, so part of my salary, half of my salary last year was budgeted to rescue for the time I spend there, including running shifts. And so that would be still reflected in, that would just reflect me, basically. So the same thing that you see in the public safety admin side is reflected here.
All right, so throwing your salary out the window right now, because I'm not really interested in that. The 2 per diems that would be, the 2 part-time per diems that would become 2 full-time employees
Mhm.
would not be taking the at least the health insurance package, is that correct?
That's what I project, yes.
And what happens if they don't?
So, yeah, that's an unknown.
So the budget proposal already assumes no health insurance?
It assumes the buyout for both.
So what I did was I looked at those 2 staff members who have expressed interest in working here full-time and assumed that through the internal application process, which posts the job internal before it goes external, that they would apply and would be likely to qualify for the job.
The temporary salaries is the part-timers, right?
That's the volunteers.
Volunteers.
Yeah.
Okay, that is,
Yeah.
so. How many hours are the full-time people going to cover? And how many hours will you still need from per diem?
Yeah, so my goal would be they cover Monday through Saturday, so 72 hours. From per diem members, it's hard to say because you're looking to use the staff and the current per diem members to build the volunteer base. So I would think that you could, budget that temp. You're right, actually, Darren. The temporary salaries includes a certain amount of money for the per diem members now, so you wouldn't have to change that, I don't think. Basically, it's the equivalent of 2 shifts per week for the per diem, and that gives you kind of the flexibility if you have a good week where everyone's in town and you get it all covered by volunteers, or if you have a bad week and you have to use a couple more that week.
I'm confused. If you got a full-time employee,
Yep.
you're gonna have to pay them a set number of hours.
So they're hourly employees who are scheduled for 36 hours a week.
So a minimum of 36.
They're scheduled for that, but obviously if they don't work it, then they're not paid. They're not salaried. Yeah.
But the goal is 1 person
Right.
per day for 72 hours a week, not
Right.
2 people.
Correct.
So you're still using the per diems potentially, or volunteers if
Right.
available.
You're kind of relying on what they call the career volunteer model, where the career staff are there to run the show, right? Run the administrative side of things, support the volunteers, but the volunteers are still pretty vital, obviously. You need the 2 people per shift for the ambulance, but it's far easier for me to find 1 person on Monday than 2 volunteers on Monday, right? Like I have a volunteer on Monday. Right now, what I don't have is the crew chief to lead the crew. That person can drive, be the second licensed member on that crew, but what we're struggling with is getting that consistent presence there to guarantee we have a legal crew.
And Taylor still runs shifts too. He still runs.
Right, and that's not additional money, that's just part of.
Part of his deal.
Yes. Yep.
Is there an actual roster that builds these numbers? Not just for rescue, I mean across the board.
Yes. And that is another hidden sheet in this file. I keep it hidden during these meetings because it contains the benefit information. But it is in the file in this file. It does not include a roster for volunteers, though. Only,
Well, this must
Regular.
be an assumption of some number of
Yeah.
hours.
yeah.
And that's what I'm finding, it sounds like others are, but I'm personally finding it very confusing as to how many hours we're talking about here. I mean, it looks like a substantial increase in part-time salaries, not really a decrease in temporary salaries to speak of.
Right.
It seems like we're adding hours, if I just look at the numbers, so.
So you can break out, you can do a schedule, I mean.
Yeah, and I'll provide in writing tomorrow exactly what I'm saying today. But, I mean, we are adding hours. We're adding at least 12 hours we're adding 12 hours per week for 2 employees. So we're adding 24 hours that we have
Which
to pay
was
for.
paid for with volunteers before.
Right.
Right, I mean, that's what I'm struggling with, is we were covering those hours with volunteers.
Yeah.
Now we're moving those volunteers to part-time. So there's a change in salary, there would be presumably a change in benefit costs, but it's kind of hard to break out exactly what's moving here.
Yeah.
Other question I've got, I don't know if you can answer this, Ty, but full-time employees, would they be union?
No.
No.
Would they qualify for the union?
Depends on what the union wants to do. There are EMTs who have joined ASME in neighboring towns. Yeah.
They will.
And so is there any benefits that would be different if these were union employees versus non-union employees? Presumably you'd have to pay sick, vacation.
There's a lot of,
The biggest problem would be, we'd be paying sick vacation time for the non-represented employees. The biggest cost would be comp time. And we have not crossed that bridge with EMT type, there's obviously no designation for EMTs in the contract. But I think that would be the biggest cost. And I know if you travel down the road, that is one of what the EMTs down there consider a huge benefit, and is obviously a huge cost driver to the town, is just the amount of comp time they rack up working overtime.
Yeah, not like you just get out of the ambulance and hop in your car, you rack up comp time.
Right. Yep.
So again, you're looking to add how many hours a week?
So currently, the per
12 or
diem.
24?
20, so total 24 hours of coverage, yeah.
So right now, you've got 2 per diems at 24 hours a week, is that right?
Correct, so there'd be 2 employees at 36 instead.
Okay. So do you see my issue here, or my little concern? If for some reason you hire EMT number 1, we don't have to give names here. And EMT number 1 is a single person, decides he's gonna take a buyout, or he's married and got kids, it's irrelevant, he's gonna take a buyout. It's not gonna do the insurances, but EMT number 1 in 3 months, 6 months down the road quits. You now have to hire EMT number 3.
Sure.
You got 1 and 2, okay,
Yep.
already. EMT 3's got a family, okay? So you're gonna be paying, if your EMTs become full-time, you add 2 full-time employees to the department, you're gonna be paying a minimum of $69.95, so that's $7,000. That's just health insurance for a single person,
Right,
or $21,000 for a family.
yep,
So if that happens once or twice, that could be $42,000 in benefits this year that's not budgeted.
And that's the same for every department.
I understand that,
Yep.
but technically by doing what you're proposing is we're adding 2 full-time employees with benefits.
yes,
So my question is, that's very expensive for benefits.
yes.
You can't go out and find 2 more per diem for 24 hours a week and not have to worry about this possible $14,000 to $42,000 a year in health insurance. And I haven't got into dental or anything else yet. That's just health insurance.
Yeah, we can try. I find that you need, like, if you want to be guaranteed that you're going to have someone fill that shift when you ask, like, you have got an open spot, you say, hey, per diems, do you want to fill this shift? You need like 10, right? Just to make sure someone is able to come and do that. So yeah, we could try that model. What I would like, and the reason this proposal is the way it is to provide some consistency and leadership with people who are in-house every day, and can focus their energy when they're not responding to calls on building the volunteer cadre so that you don't have to keep adding staff. So, my vision is that without someone who is focused on recruiting, training, and making sure life is good for volunteers, it's really hard to keep them doing, volunteering 60 hours a month at something that's pretty difficult. So from my point of view, the adding 24 extra hours of part-time or per diem staff doesn't meet that goal. And I believe in the long run, it kind of makes it more difficult to sustain the volunteer model because you just don't build up the volunteers into the EMTs that you need them to be, and you're not able to sustain the environment, the positive environment of volunteering that you need to get people to show up.
So for me, it's getting to the point where this is becoming a financial decision.
Sure.
Can we afford to run rescue in Milton? And it seems like the first conversation is actually the one you guys said you're gonna have in January, which is if we build the budget based on what it would really take to run the program the way you're describing, and calculate what our fees would have to be, then I think we gotta compare it to neighboring communities and see if we're in the ballpark or if we're just way more expensive than everybody else. If we're in the ballpark, we should raise the fees to cover these costs.
And one thing you haven't touched on that I thought you were gonna get to,
Yeah, we can.
if we do full-time employees, we can raise the level of service we provide to paramedic. At really minimal cost increase, but we can bill a lot more.
Right.
And we wouldn't have to pay intercepts that we're paying now. So we're paying intercepts to neighboring communities, and we don't provide that service here. So there is an income stream that they could, but I think,
But for me,
Yeah,
it comes back to, this needs to pay for itself, or we need to look at whether there's an alternative way to provide this service.
Right, and for 72 hours a week.
well, we would have per diems that would be we already have one per diem that works for us that's a paramedic, but she can't perform paramedic duties while on our ambulance, because we're not a paramedic
Right.
service.
Yep.
So we could raise the bar on that. And I think, Ken, your point's a good one, and I actually pushed on this already. I said, shop and see what we could hire somebody to come here and do EMS services in our community for. So we have some of that information already that we can share.
Yeah, and that's my big thing I've been saying since I was rescue chief,
Yeah.
that if we don't, everybody knows I love rescue, JP loves rescue, I mean, who could dislike rescue? But I don't see us going down this road as being a good fiscal model. It sounds like maybe you have it already, and it sounds like that probably should be shared in executive session first, that we'll have to.
We'll have to get it
schedule.
updated, but we have some of that information.
As far as contracting out with a private service, AM Care obviously is the big one around here, but I've been on that side, I've been in your seat. I've also been in Colchester, where I was number 2. I think they're up to number 5 or number 6 now. And it was always the hybrid model will get us through, and it's just not the way life works anymore. When I was rescue chief, I was single. I didn't have any kids. I always had a hard time with the folks that were married and had kids. Like, well, you can't have your radio with you at the soccer game. You're right in town. But as a parent, I see, yeah, go ahead, bring that radio to a soccer game. See what happens to your relationship with your child and your spouse. I get that now. And then the demands on everybody in this town to be able to afford to volunteer time and match the training credentials that the state is demanding. I mean, the state is really pushing the volunteer service out. There's not much we can do about that at this point. This is a nationwide trend. I just don't see us, I mean, every year you're going to come back, next year it's going to be, well, we need to have the third person on. The year after that, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth. And I just don't see that as a sustainable model. They are going to be union, no doubt about it.
That's what I was counting on.
And we're going to have the same issues that we have with the police department that we've leveled out after years. You know, are we going to start as the training ground for the bigger services that have higher call volume and maybe a higher pay? Or are we going to be competitive with them from the get-go? Are we, you know, there's no guarantee that we're still not going to have out-of-service time because these people are only going to cover 72 hours. Now, on the other side, the frosted side says that we also have to be cognizant that we're going to lose $265,000 worth of revenue. You know, since we started billing in 2003, Rescue has brought in millions to this town. That goes away. Obviously, we're not going to get a cut of that. You know, so there are costs to that as well. I just, you're spot on with increasing the billing, but you're really in a socialist controlled system of whatever the Medicare rates are determine what we can possibly bill for, and what the region we are in, we have the ability to charge for X amount of mileage, flat fee, and then so on and so forth. But you know, we're probably never going to be able to get the true cost of the call as a billable or something that insurance is going to pay out because they go on the Medicare rates.
Possibly. I know what my mother paid for ambulance service this past year.
Yeah.
It was
A lot.
very high.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
I mean, you pay a lot now.
So you do pay a lot now.
Not getting a bargain here.
There's ways to recoup more of that revenue. It's just a decision I think the board would have to make on how you want to pursue it.
We have a very soft approach.
Right.
And luckily, for the most part, most of the patients in this town, unless something's changed in the last couple of years, are insured. So that certainly makes it easier.
That has made a big difference as well. You know, the ambulance assessment that the state is taking a drawdown on Medicaid has actually returned more money, I think, than before. And the number I always look at is the net operations number. You know, what it really costs to run the organization, or what it's proposed to cost, is $130,000. I mean, that's the cost of the taxpayers, and that's the money we have to raise through taxation, not the full $401,000. And so the way, and Ken, if you want this in a different way, but the way I compare generally towns, you know, comparable towns, is by the cost per resident. So like, we're basically, under this proposal, the cost per resident is $11.37 a year for that service. And I think one of the trouble we run the trouble I have in providing that information, and of course we'll give you what I have, is that you're paying for readiness, right? I mean, and it's just sometimes a matter of, well, you have this union contract in Colchester, no union contract down the road in Charlotte, and so the cost of readiness is a lot of times just borne by whatever insurance plan someone chooses, or you know, insurance plan some town uses. So I will, of course, provide that information for you. And I can add to that tomorrow, you know, what strategies might be available to increase the revenue or recoup more revenue for, to your point.
And I know board members have different feelings than I do, but the days of the fiefdoms are over. It's just not a efficient model.
And I know you and I agree on that. I think it's getting others to
It's not efficient.
No.
You're supporting the Council of Governments.
Yeah. I support privatization of just about everything except for that guy right there.
And of course, what is silly is our neighbors have 3 ambulances on 2 islands,
Yeah.
4 or 5 ambulances on 2 islands.
Yeah,
and-
for half the call volume.
Right, not even,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, there's definitely huge inefficiencies. Not so much, I would say, in our system, but I think we're right-sized. I think this proposal has it right-sized, but, you know, obviously growth changes that.
I got just two things. One to clarify. I think you know I was chief of rescue for 15 years.
Yes, sir.
So obviously I support rescue 110%. Always have, always will. I'm going to do everything in my power as a selectman to keep Milton Rescue in town. Milton Rescue providing services to our citizens in this town. Because I do not want to go out of town for rescue services. And I'm first time I've actually had to say that, but I do not want to do that. So I'll do everything in my power to prevent that. However, I do see this becoming unsustainable, specifically with this one item here, looking at, and I just did the vision and the dental and threw it in there quickly, so it's actually closer, I'm within a couple $100 here now, of a minimum of $16,000 to $44,000
Right.
of unbudgeted benefits, health, vision, and dental.
Yep.
Again, I would love to hear you say you could get 2 more per diem.
Okay.
And I'm talking 2 additional part-time per diem for the public to understand what we're saying. Because, like I said, I do support rescue 110%, and to me, that would keep it affordable.
Okay.
But to add 44,000 of unbudgeted, I
Liability.
couldn't honestly vote for that. I just couldn't.
Potential unbudgeted liability.
I just couldn't, because it could happen.
Yep.
It may not, you know, God forbid it did, but let's hope it doesn't. But Murphy's Law, if it can go wrong, it will, you know, and if it does, those people quit, and we had to get somebody else came in with a family, and they were highly qualified, and we need qualified people, we gotta pay those benefits.
Yep.
I think it'd be wise to at least include benefit for one
Yeah.
project that.
I would point out that it doesn't even require people to quit.
Right.
I actually this year had an employee who was on their spouse's plan. The spouse lost their job.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, we became the primary.
Right.
There you go.
That's true.
And we saw, what was like $80,000 increase last year, just
Because of that.
new people that cost less, however, they happen to have
insurance.
families, and our insurance went up
See, I
significantly.
just don't want you to have to come to us at a later time and go, geez, I'm sorry, guys, but we have an issue and we have to address that, and we now have to come up with $20,000 of additional unbudgeted money to pay for the benefits, and I just, and the second, that's the statement. Now, the question I have is, you just made a comment that threw me a little bit, but I think I understand it, but I want you to explain again why or how you come up with that figure, what it would cost each taxpayer, $11, I think you said, or something like that, or whatever.
Yeah, so
What is that, how do you come up with that figure?
So I try to compare towns of different sizes, right? So I take the net operating cost, that's the expenditures minus the revenue, or revenue minus the expenditures, based on whatever spreadsheet you're looking at. But take that amount of money that's not covered by fees, by transport fees, and I divide it by 11,500 people living in town. So that's $11.37. That's the,
So he's taking $130,709, dividing it by 11,500 people.
Okay.
yeah.
Because the rest of that money.
The rest of it's coming from the
Some of it is
revenues.
billed, right, a lot of it's billed, but
Okay.
again, as Darren points out, it currently goes in the general fund. So you can do this, but it's a big hole if rescue is to leave, that's what you're pointing
Well,
out?
yeah,
Yeah, there is a cost.
Yeah,
Because
Because of the
significant
revenue.
cost.
Yes.
and the cost is not likely to be any less if you contract out, right? I mean, you've lost that revenue, but you still have to pay fee for a company to come in and provide that service, because there's no private ambulance service in Vermont at this point that's large enough just to say, hey, there's a revenue opportunity, sure, we'll go do it. It doesn't exist yet. And so you have some smaller for-profit or regional, or larger for-profit or smaller regionalized nonprofit ambulances, but they're still taking taxpayer dollars. They're still taking allocations from towns to support their operations. You know, so that's kind of the trade-off you get between if you run it yourself or you don't run it yourself.
But there's other opportunities, you know, and I don't think you were saying that in your statement, but I am not suggesting that the ambulance be stationed out of town. I think a town of this size and our geography just doesn't work that way anyway. Other towns get the benefit of having stations that you have to drive by one station to go to a call. We don't have that here. But the service would be provided from within
Yes.
Milton, and maybe part of the fee that is paid to the service is the use of station as their
Or equipment.
their base. Yep.
We have a lot
So
of equipment we invested in.
that
Sure.
could
Yeah.
offset. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. I have no idea in the world. But it, for me, and I've said this a million times, I'll never vote for full-time employees until I know what the proposal is out there for a private service to do this. And maybe it would be a no-brainer, and I say, well, of course, I'll take the $130,000 cost. But I need the data point to make that decision.
And this is not unique to Milton. I mean,
No.
Oh, of course not.
Yeah.
Missisquoi
It's
and
a huge
Lancare,
problem.
there's a lot of that. And then up in the Northeast Kingdom, we're seeing one ambulance now serving 2 or 3 different towns, all for the same reasons, so.
I mean, I'd love for us to, I mean, if there's an option out there to provide service to another town as well to increase revenue or something, that I think we should explore that.
So just, so we want to get you know what information you're.
Yep.
Okay, good.
I'm good to
Okay, I
go.
just want to make sure, because I didn't make notes.
Okay.
this
I
time.
know what I'll add to my report, so.
Yeah, and in the meantime, I agree with Darren. I think at least one, there needs to be reflected in the budget, at least one person, if this were to go through like this, at least one person with insurance.
Yep.
Just worst case scenario. I like to look at worst case scenario.
Sure.
And sometime next week when
Mhm.
you're ready and available, that an executive session needs to be added to
Sure.
one of the meetings, because I don't
Right.
think we should have this conversation in public first, if you do have.
We have an executive session scheduled for Monday night.
Okay, right, yeah, because that's a regular
Right,
meeting.
it's a regular meeting, we have one item that we gotta deal with, so we can.
Okay.
Okay.
Does that make sense, or?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Caleb.
That's it?
No. It's not it.
Oh,
But the
yeah.
next
Oh,
few,
there is stuff to go.
It's
Yeah.
right near
Yeah.
the clock, isn't it?
we can be quick.
Where are we going next, Jess?
You want to do debt first?
Do
Because
debt.
that's just a
Thank you, Steve. Thank you.
What are you gonna do first?
debt.
Debt service.
Yep.
We don't have any debt.
So, I tried to add a little bit more detail to the debt spreadsheet this year, so you'll see that I've got end dates for pretty much everything at this point. Yes. So you can tell when things are coming off the books, so to speak. Other things to note, so the information that's at the very bottom of this schedule are still estimates based on our borrowing for the bridges and vehicle and equipment that we purchased, that we've either purchased this year or will be doing next spring, summer. I've also included an estimate in here, so 30% of the principal and interest for the sidewalk plow is being covered by impact fees, so I've just included this as a separate line to show that this is the amount coming from impact fees to cover a portion of this debt here going, and it's scheduled out for future years as well.
That's 30%.
Yep, yep. So there's really no change to the debt schedule other than adding this, this debt on for this year. And the other thing I will note is that I also created a similar schedule for the enterprise funds. So water, wastewater now has a separate schedule, so all of our debt is included in our budget file, just in 2 areas. So you can see town-wide, what our liabilities are. So the total FY20 debt service is $550,000. Do you guys have any questions on that? This is general fund. We'll look at water, wastewater next week, unless you want to see.
So it's up 110,000 from last year?
Yep.
From this year, rather.
And all of that is for the 2 bonds.
Correct. Okay.
How much money do we have in the impact fee fund that isn't obligated?
Well, funny you should ask. I just did that today. Let me just pull up the schedule.
While she's pulling that up, we haven't seen permits or impact fees accruing like we had budgeted. So we're seeing that there's a downturn, you know, just so you all know. We talked about water and sewer connections, but impact fees are on that same trajectory. We're not, nobody's building, we're not getting fees.
Okay. So the balance, and this is by category, so the total balance as of today is $243,000.
Total or unobligated?
Total. So one thing I need to do is go back to prior years and track forward what's obligated of projects that are still out there that haven't been completed yet. So this is just a snapshot of FY19. So by category, general government, so let me just explain how this spreadsheet is set up. So this first column here shows what our capital plan breakdown is for the current year, which is what we based our impact fees on. This is our beginning, next column over is the beginning balance as of July 1st. The next column over is what we've collected to date. And this is broken out, so this is calculated out based on each category's percentage of the total. And then anything that we've transferred out so far, and it's really been just the two projects that we've done so far this year, which is giving us our ending balance as of today.
But there's gotta be, there's no other, other than those 2 projects, there's nothing coming out of impact fees this year?
There will be, it just hasn't happened yet. Yep. So that's what I need, what I can do is take this spreadsheet and add in like a projection column to show the total transferring out for the year. plus any additional, like if there was a project, the field house was a good example where it spanned multiple fiscal years. Any remaining funds from a prior year that is still obligated for a specific project. I can add all of that into another column. But this spreadsheet isn't set up to track that way right now.
So you've got the revenue side. I'm just looking at this Public Works
Yep, sorry.
bucket.
Yep,
So the balance at the beginning of the year is 181,000.
correct.
We've got a number of projects that have been, we budgeted for this year, which is your red column, right?
Correct.
And then you're tracking the money coming in and the money going out on those.
Yep.
But you don't have any commitments from previous
From
years.
previous years, right.
So in Public Works, we're showing a pretty substantial overage. There's
Right.
81,000 in projects and 193,000 in the fund, is that right?
Right. I can tell you, for example, the sidewalk gap project, there are unspent monies from last year that are still obligated to that project, so that's not reflected in here. Let me just look back at something. So last year we had 45,000 budgeted, and we only spent just under 18. But the other factor that's in here is that we only collected 10. So this 45 is meant to eat up some of the balance that's in that account, but it needs to be also offset by the ins and outs from last year as well, to net out to the total.
How much of that is pumpkin money this coming fiscal year?
So this coming fiscal year, let's see. We have scheduled the sidewalk plow.
No,
Oh, sorry.
I mean, we have, I did that on purpose so you wouldn't hear my apple chewing, but I guess everybody gets to, it's very crispy. We have, what, 6 years to spend money,
Right.
or it has to be returned to the developer?
Correct.
How much of that money turns into a pumpkin this
Gotcha.
coming fiscal year is my question.
Yep, I don't know that yet, so I'll be working on that. My plan was to have that ready for next week when we present the planning budget.
Because that always scares me as
Yeah.
to,
Yep,
I mean, we shouldn't be asking for it if we're not going to use it, and we
Right.
should be using for it if we asked for it.
yep,
Using it if we asked for it, rather.
yep.
If I remember correctly, last year we weren't even close.
Right.
We didn't have
Right.
any problems.
And that's what led to a major factor into doing the field house
Field house.
project. But now I would say we don't have much money in
Right.
impact fees. I'm thinking after you,
That's not
Total,
obligated
yep.
to, right.
yeah, obligations for
Yep.
a purchase that we're going to make a few
Yep.
years from now or whatever.
Mhm. And so that you know, I have been in touch with Don Johnson at the school to prompt him. So right now, there is $3,000 sitting in the education category that will have to be spent 6 years from now. So I've got that on my radar, and I'm prompting him to make sure that that's part of their discussions, their budget discussions at the school as well.
But there's no
But-
new,
Correct.
Money
And that's,
coming.
so my original email to him was to ask, are you guys planning on anything that you would be requesting impact fees for? He said as of now, this was a few weeks ago that I asked, as of then, there were no plans.
But there is a $2.2 million expansion.
Expansion.
They're looking.
Right.
and we got to,
Could be up to 3.2.
with that in mind, and since we gone down this road, unless something changed in the last 1 or 2 fiscal years, the amount, that, what was it, 83,000 that?
79.
79?
Yep.
So
Yeah,
80,000
80,000.
that the school had for the debt service for the Herrick Avenue addition. That was paid in full every year, regardless of the amount of impact fees that we received. So like, this year, we would have paid the school $80,000, but we probably aren't going to have $80,000 total in impact fees, potentially.
Right.
Oh, yeah, right.
In other years, obviously, we far exceeded the projected revenue in impact fees, and we took a little bit of a bath, but we have to make sure that they get the percentage of the impact fee that is received, not that is.
Not what they've requested.
Good point.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because I know that we took a loss.
Mhm.
So, you know, their impact fees paid for probably 75% of their portion as they were supposed to, but we ended up paying $25,000 out of not doing something else on our side.
So can you track those on the breakdown each year, Jess? Is that that's what you're doing right there, right? That $3,000 is all we've got this year. Right. In education.
Right. Yeah, and we're not
3,000.
assigning any new fees there because there
Right.
was nothing in the capital plan for that category.
But,
Yep.
but in 6 years, we could look back and say, okay, we've got 3,000 in this year, whatever.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, so this is tracked year by year, but there's no cumulative net to take into account those assigned projects.
Isn't that where all
there.
the question and concern came last year, was trying to identify that?
Yeah. I mean, I like this structure, but it almost seems like anything that's not paid in full from a previous year should come over to the next year.
Right. Yep, and that's
So it
why I'm thinking.
builds over time.
Yeah, if I add a column, if I just simply add a column in, you know, revenue, money in, money out, assigned, balance. I think that will be the simplest. A lot of these spreadsheets, especially for impact fee tracking, are very complex, so I've been trying to wrestle with what's the easiest way to track it and still make it readable for everybody.
And I don't remember from the decision last year with the equipment, other than the sidewalk plow, we went from 2 to 2, but we went from, let's say, 1.5 to 2.
Yep.
Right? So we have 2 official sidewalk plows instead of using a Bobcat
Right.
as our backup. Grader,
Was a replacement.
but more capable than the previous one.
Mhm.
I still don't get it, you know. And then every year, we might not necessarily have more cruisers, but we certainly use them more. It would seem like there is a percentage that we would be able to use impact fees for.
I don't think so, just based on the research that I've done.
Same with the fire truck. The new fire truck's more capable than the old fire truck. It holds more water.
It's replacing, I understand, but anything new is gonna have more capacity, hopefully, than
Right.
old. But is it driven because we have more growth, or because ISO says we need a new engine?
Or because they don't make
Or
the size
related
grader
on-
we used to have.
But they're both related to growth, whether you use ICO as your model or,
You can tie it in, but I don't think you can.
yeah.
I don't think you can sell it. I mean, you can
I don't
tie it
think you
all
can
in, but
use it.
I don't disagree with you. I just don't, when you look at the clear, the definition that's been used,
Yeah.
I've read that report a couple times that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I still don't.
If you go back, the original description we got when I first got on the board was are you adding something new?
No,
Right.
right.
You adding
And that's
an
every-
additional cruiser on top of the 12 you already own. You're buying a 13th. Well, that 13th one qualifies.
Yep. And that's everything that I've read, that's,
But we have more cruisers than we did before, and we've never used $1 of impact fees towards them. That's, so I don't think I don't want to do something that's going to put the town in legal jeopardy or misuse whatever source of revenue that we receive, but I also don't want to just assume that we can't
Right.
do it because of our preconceived beliefs and everything. And
This-
we do have more cruisers than we did
Yeah,
3
absolutely.
years ago.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Uh,
But if you read that Peter Anthony report, it's pretty,
We need John Cushing here to talk about this.
How many more cars do we have than we did? Do we have more cars than we did last year? Because they kept that,
they kept one, that white Tahoe.
yeah.
so from FY 18 is when they added a vehicle to the fleet, I believe.
That's when they kept the
They
Tahoe.
kept the Tahoe, right.
But they only got one replacement car last year, didn't they?
Right. But the Tahoe
And
was,
they got one replacement car this year, FY 19,
But last year, they got two.
I believe so.
But kept one.
Yeah,
And that's why
That's where the
I know.
additional car comes.
I find the
Yep.
car thing is something that just makes my blood pressure go up every time we talk about it.
Really? I've never heard you talk about this before in all these years. It's definitely a tough one.
okay. You wanna do?
Hey, what's that item highlighted in yellow?
Ah,
it's eliminated.
It's coming out.
It's eliminated.
oh, man.
We,
Can't
did
talk
you-
about that again this year?
No, we don't, you know why?
No.
You don't?
gone.
You got one.
Wait,
It's
wait
getting
till you hear
deleted.
this
Because
one.
you weren't here at the last meeting. This is what happened. You're gonna love it, Ken. So in that line, there was a
Move his
$26,000.
microphone back a little bit.
There was a $26,000,
I thought we started to move back.
a $26,000 item that a week and a half ago, we learned that a local contractor had bought one of these and hadn't used it only a couple times because it wasn't big enough for what they did.
Twice on Sunday, that's it.
So they offered it to us for $5,000. We had the money in the budget, but we negotiated it down to $4,500. So we bought it. I just want you to know. It was in the minutes, but I know how much that, but I can tell you today, they were out and they patched a bunch of potholes with that.
Which roads?
I don't know, but I know Dave told me this morning they were
Every
out.
road but Everest Road.
I can
is
find
what
out
Don
right
No,
now.
I want to know which
Yeah.
roads so I can go drive them and see if the
If it works.
asphalt is still there.
Okay.
Not like-
Listen, I did do some
7?
research. I did some research, and people told me that if the cost for the product, coal patch is $135 per ton.
Don't even open that door.
Okay, I won't, but I just wanted you to know, because you weren't here.
We had this conversation 2 years and maybe 3 years in a row with what the actual cost of producing the hot patches when you do the box plus the propane plus everything else.
It comes up to the same number. So I'm only gonna share with you that we got it. I think it's gonna be a good thing, but I don't know if it's gonna save money.
Yeah.
Well,
It's gonna stay in.
Saves
the-
money on the town.
The thing,
manager,
the
since
thing
we
what
have
it's
to
going to
fire
do,
him.
from what people have told me outside of our staff, is that the hot patch will stay in the hole, whereas the cold patch gets beat out of it.
Yeah.
So,
Which
I
is
don't
why I
know.
want to know what roads is put on.
Okay, I'm gonna find out right
For
now.
sure.
We,
I want you to know, because I want to know too, now that I brought it up.
We going that to the state so I can pick Route 7,
right. They'll probably charge us for it.
I guarantee it.
Yeah, we got, JP and I looked at each other when he told us. And
We just rolled our eyes.
oh.
But you didn't know until you slid that through when Ken wasn't here.
No, Ken was, no, I want to make sure it's on the record.
The good news is that
You got a deal.
got it for 20,000 less.
That's
That-
right.
that's-
Right.
That's,
That's right.
that's the good news. You got a
And it
deal.
is.
And I got to show you, it looks
It looks brand new, yeah.
So my complaining for 3 years actually paid
It
for
paid
my
off.
salary.
It did.
Yeah.
It really did. It would not, because when she first told me about it, I said, it's got to be really good deal, because there was no way I'm going down that path. And I told her, I said, it's got to be under 6. Well, then it was 5.
Well,
But
then
we
I
got it-
said it's gotta be under 5, because then it's not capital,
Yeah.
and
But we got
it
it for
can come out of
45.
operating.
Mr. Turner kicked in his negotiating skills a
That's
little
right.
further and said, hey, I want another $500.
I know, how we
Nice to talk
we have
to her.
limited dollars, we got to use them as far as we go. So,
You
town
wanna do
manager,
general or manager
wherever
first?
you want to go.
Let's do manager, cause it'll be a little bit
Training,
quicker, I
though.
think.
What's that?
Yeah.
Oh, no, they're already out there.
Unmandated training.
Okay. So the manager's budget, there's really, you guys are tough. Tough.
4% increase overall.
The biggest line item is the employee recognition.
Down to a line.
Where are
Yeah.
you?
There it is.
Employee recognition, right here.
We had $500. We went to $1,200 because we haven't really done a lot. I mean, I'm not talking, we're talking like an event to recognize years of service, things like that. It's not, and I don't know if I would use all that, but there's really not much in there to recognize employees. And I think it's,
And you need to.
we have good morale right now. People are happy, and I'm hoping to keep them that way.
Money well worth spent. The guys work hard and they ought to be recognized for it.
So this year at the
All
holiday
things
party,
help.
we're doing certificates for everybody that's been here 5 years or more.
Actually, the
And-
biggest increase was the furniture fixture line item.
Where's that one?
Oh, jeez.
$1,200.
Well, furniture fixture.
You got 1,200 budgeted, and we've spent 1,000 this year.
Trying to think, I thought that was a computer, but that's up here.
Yeah, you don't have
Did you,
anything for
did you put
computers.
it in both lines, maybe?
I think I might have put it in the wrong line. That's what I did. Because I don't have any
Yeah,
need to
anything.
buy any furniture this year. So I don't have any, so the computer was what I was.
Yeah, you have
so
any
I got it
technology.
in the,
Technology was 0.
yeah, so that's,
That should move.
No, machinery and equipment
Machinery and
is-
equipment is the
so he's
computer.
double called it.
I got that in there then, okay.
Yep.
So I
What's
don't
furniture
really,
gonna be?
what's that?
What's your furniture gonna be?
I don't have any furniture expectations this year, so.
So you just cut it $1,200.
So we'll just put
So we
that
can cut
at
it
0.
$1,200.
There we go.
Boy, that was quick.
So School Street, North Road, Bear Trap, Racine, and Hunting Ridge. If we go back Bear Trap, you
Bear
know.
trap, yeah.
Check that
I
out.
drive that every morning, okay.
In Route 7.
No, we didn't do Route 7.
I know.
So I don't
take
have
me out
any
in
real
case
furniture.
it Gets kicked out.
Somebody was complaining about Route 7 big time the other day. I let him talk, I get all done, he says, sorry, bud, we don't do Route 7.
Right.
What do you mean?
So, yep, we took the 1,200 out because there's no
Okay,
need for
so that's gone.
furniture
You sure?
at this. I'm positive.
Everybody
Everybody,
stayed up desk?
I don't need that.
Okay,
That's it.
general.
General.
All right, so select board. There's an increase to other professional service, and this is based on the new quotes for the audits that we have. So we know that we will be paying $27,500. The $8,000 is questionable. We were not subject to a single audit this year. Next year, we may be, depending on what grants come in. But we did not meet the threshold this year. So in FY '20, it's $5,000 for a single audit plus $8,000 for each additional program. And historically, we've had like 2 or 3 programs that have been subject to single audit at one time. So I just kind of took an average and plugged it in there. Advertising, printing and binding are just based on historical averages. Citizen recognition, Don, what, do you remember what that one was for?
Well, so in the planning budget, you've historically, so the last couple of years, Jake had put $500 or $600 to recognize all the people that serve on the commissions in the planning and economic development. Last year in June, we grew that. We actually recognized anybody that volunteered, whether they did the gardens or they did whatever. We had library volunteers and so on. So Victor and I talked, and I pulled some of the money that I put money in here because it was coming out of his budget, and we reduced the amount that he was looking for. So that's what that is. So anybody that volunteers for the town at all. We had a little gathering, we recognized them, we asked them the years of service they've been committed. Darren was present for that, remember? That's what I was envisioning with that.
Okay. Insurance, we have a meeting next week with Hickok and Boardman. So I will have a better final number here. We'll have a quote from them. We were told verbally at our kickoff meeting that, our pre-renewal meeting, I should say, that they expected overall for the cost to stay the same. There might be some shifting between,
Water, wastewater.
right. But that overall it should stay the same. So what I did was I put this in based on the bills that we've paid so far this year. So it's down a little bit more again. So the general liability, when we developed the budget last year, this is down significantly, and you'll see when we get to water, wastewater, it's increased on that side because we had the ratios messed up, so that's been corrected. And it's getting applied correctly on an actual basis, but the budget for FY19 is not correct. All right, legal.
So have you reached out to Passive yet?
No.
See if their new quotes are cheaper?
I should have, but I didn't. I
We'll do it next year.
I wanted to make sure and hold Hickok and Boardman at what they told us last year. We wouldn't see a significant increase. So we're not going to. But we should reach out to Passive next year.
The legal increase is, again, just based on historical average. Okay, county and regional taxes. So the items that are in yellow, we highlighted, Don and I, when we were looking through this, just to highlight the items that are fees that are assessed to the town, and they're not at the discretion of staff or the select board. It's a bill that we
It's just more for
receive.
Brenda's concern. Brenda kept highlighting how she wanted to show the nonprofits if we had a separate vote and so on. So we were trying to highlight, like Jess said, yellow, the things that are really not at your discretion. It's a bill.
Negotiable, yeah.
Yeah.
So all of the other items in here, what I've populated is the request that came from the organization. And I've made a note for each organization what the original request was, so that should the board decide to change these at all, we have the original request amount still documented in the budget file.
So, think through this right. So the number in FY20 is not what we approved previously. It's
Correct.
what they requested this year.
Correct.
Okay.
So I did that, last year we talked about this, the board makes those, so we didn't touch any of these this year.
And everybody's probably seen it and heard it, but to your point, Brenda does have the
Mhm.
request that it should be a ballot item.
Item.
I think there's I think it already is. It's a ballot item because you
It's
vote
on
on
the
the budget. But I think a lot of these should go away.
Well, clearly I think we'll be reducing a lot of these.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Frankly, I've been talking to other people other towns that I deal with,
Mm-hmm.
and the folks who have put it on the ballot have all regretted it
Yep.
because the voters approved it and now
Yep.
they're stuck.
Yep.
Right.
They can't really do anything.
Right.
Makes sense.
Well, I think we do well, and I think we're pretty fair we had to make some cuts in the last couple of years. But I think we did okay on it, you know, being pretty fair. It's gotten to, it's really costly though.
I don't know. I must have missed a meeting. The United Way is a clearinghouse for nonprofits.
Supposed to be.
Right, and we gave
They-
them a grant.
No, this is what they requested.
I thought they got a grant last year.
You gotta go back.
They
to-
are new.
they
United
did
Way
not-
is
they
You
didn't
new.
get
go back to 18.
Okay,
If you go
because
back to
when-
18, it'll show.
No.
When,
If you go back to 18, it should be a 0, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
because-
So we've
because,
never. And I put new in because it's a new.
Yeah,
we don't
didn't
have an
a
account
United
for them
Way,
yet.
'cause-
yeah, but the way the individual was describing it, I'm like, wow, we got $1,000 through? I must have missed a
No.
meeting.
Nope, you didn't.
I mean, United Way is a great program. I just don't see why they need us to chip in $1,000.
Yeah. I'm not gonna comment on that.
But, so those are the
I
requests.
donate directly to the group that I want to get the money
Yeah,
without
that's-
them taking their 10% or whatever it is.
Middleman,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's,
Yeah, same thing.
you know, and the taxpayers
What's the
could
issue
do the
with
same exact thing,
Always says missions.
or they could donate directly to United Way.
So those you'll be revisiting, for sure.
So
But-
that's.
We're not, when are we gonna revisit that? I mean, you're going over the general.
What, you want to do it now?
Right. Do you want? Yeah.
I mean, you
I'm
gotta-
prepared to do it now if you guys. I can. That's why I put these notes in so that we could, if we want to manipulate this file tonight, we've got.
I guess I would maybe ask that we wait until Brenda's here, because that was a big issue with her. In fairness to her, I mean, she's out sick tonight, you know, but
She's not gonna be here tomorrow night.
it had to be next week, because
Oh, it has to be
we already
next
know
week.
she's not gonna be here tomorrow night.
So next Tuesday, we could,
I just
Could
think
go
it
back
ought
to
to be,
that.
in fairness to her, because that was a big issue she had, and
I agree that she should be involved with it, but I don't think she would be opposed to us decreasing any of these notes either.
oh, not, I guarantee that, but
yeah.
I agree with you 100%. She thinks the same thing, but still, I don't know, guys, you know, I'm just one person, everybody thinks you ought to have her opportunity to have the input into it.
Could you put over on the side too, where you have all the requested amounts,
Mhm.
could you put the total requested over there as well? We have like
Yep.
just a placeholder to see what we started with and where we are.
Do you want me to include the items that are like the taxes up here?
No.
And
Those
then
are not the
they're
same.
not right. So
We don't have a choice now.
we had highlighted Milton Family Community Center because they use this as a grant match for
Came in for.
SSTA.
Right.
Do you want me to include that in the total? Or should we count that as one of these?
I think it should be included as,
Discretionary? Well,
Yeah.
not really
Yep.
discretionary, but-
Okay, so 49.6.
and what was the total last year?
Totally funded last
Yeah.
year?
Total you funded last year was 31,980.
How much?
31,980.
Wow, that's
Well,
quite
a couple of them are GBIC and the Artist Guild are $10,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
That's
big one.
different, I mean, that's,
Well, but GBIC is going back to their old request.
oh, that's what they requested, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm just saying there's a difference right there.
That was 10 grand, wasn't it?
Yeah. We gave them 5, I think it was.
Did we give them the full?
Give them 5.
Requested
Yeah, because they didn't,
5.
they called, Kurt called me back in October and says, how come we only got 5? And I said, well, that's what the board approved. I said, I called Frank twice, 3 times, he never called back.
So what's the amount again? 49 versus 31?
Yep, so it's a difference of 17,620.
Artist Guild is 4,200 of that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And multifamily is 5, so there's 10,000 of it right there.
You can do 15 easy with DBIC, the Family Center, and Artist Guild. It's about 15 of that difference.
And all the
14
news,
something.
for me, the news are out, all of them, what, 3,100 or
Who
whatever
was
that
the
is.
new?
Vermont Family Network, United Way, Steps End, Domestic Violence, Hope Works. Again, all great things that provide benefits to Milton residents, but, you know, you sit here and as the, you know, the annual bad guy, if you're asking for $350, how much did it cost to send you here to ask for $350?
I can't see bringing on new requests if we're downsizing old requests.
So those
We're,
are out.
we're gonna end up cutting some things that the town actually
Yes.
needs.
Yeah.
It's hard to add new. And I frankly found it very frustrating by the end to sit through week after week after week of people describing what they do, and it's
Yeah.
organizations that are serving essentially the same populations.
Right.
And you've got, you know, a dozen of them that
Yep.
I found myself sitting here saying, well, some efficiencies could be gained if we had 2 of you instead of 12 of you.
Right.
And we won't do that next year. I mean, we'll just
Right.
take
And-
all the stuff and.
Yep, and I don't remember if you were at that meeting or not when I suggested that, obviously, I think we've seen all of them.
Yeah, they're all, yeah.
But I don't see the value of having them come here. I think a one sheet proposal with
Yep.
questions that we ask or send it to them in advance,
Yep.
similar to what you do for anything that comes on the agenda.
Yeah, we got information sheets on them, and if we had questions, we could always
Yeah.
go back and you get the answers from
Yep.
No, I
Saves them
totally
coming,
get it.
saves time.
So next year, we won't be doing all that.
Yep, I think, yeah, obviously, the Artist Guild, great program. I think it brings economic development to the town, but we can't afford that increase. The Red Cross, I guess, didn't request. I'm glad. I don't think we need to support the American Red Cross. Vermont Center for Independent Living, I think that should go. Committee on Temporary Housing, I think that should go. The Association for the Blind, I think that should go. And Age Well, I guess, took care of it for us. The Groovy Lunch Bunch should probably be removed. Green Up Vermont, we
This is-
kept it in this category? I mean, it's just,
This is something that.
yeah, we do it every year.
We do it every year.
That's for
I
the-
don't think, I think that's a cost that should come out of Public Works, not.
It actually comes, I think it comes out of, Jake was doing it out of planning and economic development.
Right.
Yeah, EDC
I
does.
think it's just
EDC.
miscategorized, is what I'm trying to say.
So we can move that over to EDC if you want for next year, for FY '20.
Yeah, or Public Works, I mean, they're the ones that
Yeah.
bear
I
the
think it's
burden.
misnamed too, isn't it? We don't actually send that money to the state.
Correct.
It's for our local folks
Right.
to pay for their lunch or whatever they're gonna
Right,
do.
exactly. Yeah, they
Conservation
do
Commission was the one that oversaw that.
Yeah,
Wow.
they do
It
a
used to be private. I mean, Sally
Right,
oversaw
oh
it for
yeah,
years.
that's
Yep.
right, that's right.
Yeah, so there's a volunteer that goes and buys all the supplies and then submits a receipt, or not supplies, but food. They do like a barbecue at lunchtime.
VNA, I think, should be 0. Howard Center should be 0. GBIC, I'm gonna suggest should be 0 this year. I don't, it's not an assessment. If it's an assessment, it should be, treated as such based on some sort of formula. It's not, it's just based on an ask. Obviously, everything above is different.
I'm not sure I'm prepared to have this debate tonight.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm just putting my 2 cents out there.
So would you got it, do you want to just do it next Tuesday, and we'll just leave this section out and be prepared to? do it
I mean,
Tuesday night?
what, the schedule, we got the 4 meetings scheduled. Is
Yep.
the staff's anticipation by the end of next Tuesday, we have a final budget?
We
Is
thought
that
we
your-
we thought that we'd get to that point and then have a subsequent meeting as needed. You know, that, we were gonna reschedule last night's meeting, but we made it up, some of it tonight, and we will. But we thought we'd get to next Tuesday night and then have the board say, okay, when is the final meeting to go over the budget? That's what we had thought.
Okay.
I mean,
Is that-
that makes good
that's what
sense.
we-
Yeah.
That's
Yep.
what we talked about.
I think we need to do that.
And then we can revisit those things that we highlight, that Jess highlights or whatever.
Yep. Yeah, we had that 6th meeting unscheduled as a kind of a floater to fill in wherever we needed.
It'll give us a chance to give you all the information you need and give you a break in between to study it. And not study it too hard, Ken.
On GBIC, I would like to know how many years it's been $10,000. I mean, I think it's been $10,000 forever.
Forever.
Yeah,
I can tell you at least back to 96, it was
right.
that.
I mean, again, an assessment is based on use of
Was that
projected for a
put
fiscal year.
somewhere else maybe before?
I
In
don't know.
under planning possibly? Because
I don't
it's, there's nothing,
Have you ever given them 10 grand?
yeah, in
Yeah,
FY
every year
18.
except for last year.
Except for
Yeah.
last year is the only one?
Yeah.
For
So-
years and years, it was treated just like the RPC. It was
Oh,
kind
just
of, they sent us a
Yeah.
letter, we sent them a check,
Yeah.
basically.
So I'll have to
Is
look
it
back and
dues?
see where that was.
Is it an
covered.
assessment, or is it just essentially a grant?
Is the RPC that necessary?
The RPC is like state funding.
Yeah.
You can't really, if you don't pay them, you don't get state grants or anything.
And quite frankly, you get more.
We've
More
got a
value
lot-
for your,
we've got a lot
more
this
bang
year.
for your buck with
We
that.
definitely
That's what I
got
was
money,
thinking anyway.
we got our value this year.
Yep.
Huh?
We got our value this year
Yeah.
compared to the
Just
first year.
for-
was there.
Yeah.
Just for like, I don't know, just for the fun of it. What, if we took $49,000 out of this budget, where would it put us compared to where we are right now?
Let's see,
It'd be about a 4.5 cent tax increase.
Jesus.
yeah.
But that, I mean, we're gonna make changes in rescue, there's some other stuff we're
Right,
gonna.
right, but.
And I was frankly hoping to get some input from you on, is there a better way to do what we're talking about with paving and roads? We've talked to other people, we've done this, but I don't know, Ken, you've been around, you guys got experience.
I don't see a bond as,
My only thing with doing that is I get calls, honest to God, I've gotten in the last 3 weeks, 6 calls. People said, our roads are terrible, can we fix it? I said, we don't have the money to fix it. Well, I would pay more to fix it. And I said, okay, but it's not in our budget, I can't fix that.
Yeah. They
So-
pay more to fix it until you spend the money, and then they're gonna
Right.
start complaining.
So the reason we did it like this is it would give people, if they couldn't complain anymore if they had a chance to vote on it, it was voted down. right? I mean, maybe they could, I don't know. I'm just trying to,
No,
that's why we did it the way we
You're
did.
giving us options, which is
That's all I'm
what you're
trying to do.
supposed to do.
Give you options.
And then we get to,
And you figure it out.
The problem with the bonds, I mean, the downside of the bonds is it's not, I mean, you put $300,000, whatever it is, in this year, but if you pass the bond, that becomes an annual expense, and then next year you don't have any paving money.
Right.
Unless you raise the budget again.
Right.
That's right. No, I know.
So you
And we
start locking
talked,
in.
that's what we talked about with Dave when we,
Yeah.
We went over and over and over and then back. And it's like, you know.
but you're, I mean, we'll get into this
Yeah.
on a different night, but you're talking about, you said a 5-year bond,
Not a bond. It's a loan that pays,
Yeah.
how's it called? It's a
revolving loan.
refunding loan.
refunding
loan. So you're talking about doing $300,000 a year for 5 years.
No, we were gonna lump it up and then pay back. And then pay it down and then pay more down. So it's basically what Ken said, we're gonna pay it back over 5 years.
Right, but
Do
you're
one
not gonna
big
do
payment, right?
$1.5 million worth of paving in 1 year.
No, I was hoping to do it over a 2-year period.
2 year.
Yeah,
Because
so
we
we
really
borrow.
don't have the capacity to do that kind of work in 1 year. We just learned it with the bridges.
Mhm.
We passed the bond in March, but it took us, we're just getting the design work, and we're gonna get a permit, and we won't be able to build them till this year. But if we could do 600,000 and then another 600, 700, I don't know. I just know the demand, and we've worked on this paving. I wanna bring it to you guys, well, Dave's bringing it tomorrow night.
Yeah.
Let's look at it all.
We had $350,000 to pave main roads that we spent on other roads, so. There's no easy answer.
No, there isn't, and that's,
I mean, I guess for me, well, I think fund meter's pegged for tonight, but
okay.
we, some of the questions I'm gonna be looking for is, yeah, you got 6 phone calls.
I'm
I
just
understand.
sharing that.
Yeah,
I don't-
no,
yeah,
I
no.
understand that, but, and what I was sharing with Don the other day is, because he's been asking this question, what are we gonna do? We got roads to pave, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep. I think that we as a board, rightfully so, want good roads in Milton. And just from my driving experience around the state and in this region, our roads are better than most towns. I think we have a combination of we have a combination of better planning, and higher expectations, and we've invested in that, especially in the last 4 or 5 years. I don't want to skimp on it, but we can't afford to have, I mean, we weren't expecting the tax increase that we had last year, you know, but not for the devaluation of the dams, it would have only been a half-cent increase or 0.5.
Yeah, it would have been less than we had
Yep.
promised.
But now this year, we've got bonds that we set up last year, and I just don't see how adding another bond this year is wise, in that category
And I'm,
especially.
you know, like I said,
Yeah.
I'm okay with it. I want you to see all the stuff that we got out there and then figure out how we're
I
gonna.
mean, because I could see us having a lean year, and maybe we only put $110,000 or something into paving, to offset the impact.
And that's-
I mean, what would that, if?
Well, we still will be eligible for a Class 2 paving.
Right. Yep, and
And
maybe
we didn't get it this year because they gave us 175.
For the bridges.
Yep. But next year, we won't apply for the bridge because we got those in place and we'll have those hopefully built, but.
Theoretically.
So even if, yeah, but we do have, so even if we didn't pave,
Mhm.
okay, we do have to do something about the Lake Road culvert.
Mhm.
We have to do something about Munson Hill.
Mhm.
We have to do something, we just identified Duffy Road has an imminent culvert failure that we didn't know about till last week. And then there's one on Rolling Irish we have known about that we've got to do something. So I understand, and we know we have to live within our means, and and Dave understands that. I mean, I said, you got to keep finding, I mean, when you find this stuff, we need to know it, the board needs to know it. But you aren't going to get it all fixed in 1 year. You just aren't going to do it. If we have to close a road because the culvert fails, then we got to close the road. But that's the word, I mean, hopefully nobody gets hurt. The one on Lake Road is the one that's of most concern to me, in that we've known for years it's got holes in it, and they've looked inside and it's concave.
You talking about that big one on the curb?
And like Ken, you guys have dealt with it before, you thought you had enough money to fix it, and lo and behold, it's 10% of what it's gonna cost to fix it. So, this is a discussion, I'm glad that we're having, I just wanna put it out, and we fully understand, I mean, we understand. I wanted to bring you a 0 to 1 or 2 cent tax increase, not a 5, but we started at 22. And it wasn't, I mean, people weren't just pipe dream stuff, they're bringing stuff that is real. So we have done our best, and department said, hey, people gotta pay their taxes. And the board has to make a decision that they can live with too. So that's why we're here, and we get it, and that's why we've done our best job at this point, and we will find you information, support whatever you gotta do. I mean, that's what we have to do. And I didn't tell you about the 6 people, but in my tenure here, I haven't had people call me and tell me that they would pay more to get the roads fixed. So I want to make sure you're aware of that, and that's it.
Yep. Do we have any questions that we want answers to for probably, at this point, next week's meetings?
And you can just email me too if you think of things,
Yeah.
and then we'll get it.
I mean, we already got a few from.
Yeah, tonight we got a little bit of a list.
Yep, but anybody think of additional questions that they?
I did want to let you know, I'm still exploring the leachate for revenue for wastewater plant. I talked about that.
Yep.
A&R denied Casella to add us as a temporary trial. But it could be as much as, how much did they say a day? $3 and some, or 3 cents?
3 cents.
3.5 cents a
It's a gallon.
And we could get as much as 24,000 gallons a day.
A day.
It's a significant amount of revenue for wastewater if it doesn't mess up our process and we get approval, which they would pay for, but we're continuing to pursue that. We are looking at additional revenue to help offset some of these things.
What was A&R's reason for?
Because they didn't want to give us a 2-week approval, because we wanted to try it. We said, Dave and Tom and I said, let's try it to see if it does anything to our process, as long as the state approves it and so on. They didn't approve it, so now they're gonna take another step.
Did they suggest something that they would approve?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a matter of them modifying the permit as a permanent modification.
Okay.
And I've got to talk to Dave and Tom and you, but it's a potential revenue source that is going to be an ongoing revenue source. It's one that can be shut off in the future.
Right.
So it's not like we're giving away capacity that we can never get back.
Right.
So that's why it's interesting, and I really would like to continue
And
pursuing
we
it.
aren't even close to using half of
Oh,
our capacity.
no, we got plenty of capacity,
Yep.
plenty of capacity.
Good.
Yeah, so it's a potential, that's something that we're looking at. I talked about the VEPSI thing anyway. The Grange, the school is gonna be doing an addition. So they've met, Bruce Cheeseman went over and looked at the Grange today. They're looking to rent a place for up to a couple of years, for 4 to 10 employees. We've talked about the Grange, and we're talking about it because if they could do some renovations to it and cover our utility costs and so on for the next couple of years, it would make it a lot easier. And not easier, but it would make it worthwhile. And the Grange has been used quite a bit. We're using it quite frequently.
Who's got keys to that?
You can have a key to it. It's got a lock on it.
I
It
don't
has a lock on
necessarily
the
need a
door.
key, I just wanna pick one up and go look at it.
No, it's got a lock on it, and I'll write down the number here for you. It's a little Realtor key box Just punch in the numbers and the keys there.
Oh,
It works because we have Meals on Wheels distribute out of there every day. So their driver drops it in the morning, and then the people that deliver the meals come there and pick it up. They've been doing that since July 1st.
Yeah, that's why I go in and look at it, because I haven't been in there in
If
years.
the school district did decide that that was a location they could use,
Yep.
that would shut it off for any other.
No. John and I have talked, and we would bring to you, but we've talked about using the lower level
Right.
for the office space. We do not want to shut off the upstairs. We have a lot of things that can be done there.
So the upstairs would stay,
Yep.
possibly stay
We
open
have-
for.
Right, we have a dog obedience class that's starting there on Sundays, $125, I think, a week. So, is it a week or a month? I think it's a week. Is it a month? They're doing it once a month, but $125 a month.
But it would still have the potential of limiting what could go on in the
It may.
upstairs space during business hours.
Well, it could, yeah, it might. So those are things that I want to bring to you, but covering the cost is something that's, and getting bathrooms renovated and stuff, if we didn't have to pay for it, would be, make the space even more usable.
Consistent revenue would be great
Yep.
to have.
Covering utilities and stuff like that. So,
And any renovations will be ADA as well.
right, yep. And then if we don't buy it, we get the money back.
Right.
Yeah. So, but any questions you have, please, bring them to us, and we get it. We'll do whatever we gotta do and find out whatever information you need to try to bring this.
So on the, when are we going to get the projection for the value of the dams?
We had a meeting Monday, and he's gonna be here at your meeting on January 7th with information in hand. Actually, is it the second meeting or the first meeting?
Second meeting.
So is it 21st?
Yep.
No. Because that's after,
We have to have it.
I mean, we literally have to have,
He can give you something now, but he won't have that information till the first week in January. That's what he told us. He can give us a projection. I can get him to come to the meeting and tell you too.
yeah, I mean,
He's gonna get the stuff from the state in the
Right.
first week in January, which
but
is,
whatever the date of the second meeting in January, sometime around the 20th, literally gives us about 3 or 4 days to print the ballot for March.
And I need to have the budget to the town clerk's office to be printed in
Right.
an annual report, which
Right.
is due the first week of January, I
Right.
believe.
So,
we can he can only give you his best guess based on last year's information.
I thought at the meeting, he made it sound like he could nail it down pretty close with,
We just talked to him Monday.
Yesterday.
We met with him Monday.
right, review the meeting that he was here. I mean, we know that the last number is going to fall off. We know, or we have the ability to contact Green Mountain Power and find out how much they've been producing per
Mhm.
month.
I told him whatever he does, it better go up.
Right.
He didn't tend to agree with that.
Right. And we know that we don't have the final number until April.
Right.
But,
Right, one of the things that I have learned is some towns are entering into three-year agreements. We talked about this before.
yeah,
And if this number is going down or volatile again, we might want to look at locking in. What do you think? What do you guys think? Does it make, I mean,
depends. I mean, if we're seeing 2 down years in a row,
Right.
no.
well, no, but we could lock in a stabilization agreement.
Right, but they're not gonna lock it in. It's
They're gonna lock it in at
their
the low
advantage
point.
at that point, right? Because they got 2 lean years, and maybe next year they get lucky and they increase production, but they're paying
that's a
this
lot.
year's and last year's rate, would be my concern.
Yeah.
If you're gonna do a stabilization agreement, you're gonna wanna base it on a long-term average.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, hydro plants cycle about every 20 years. They have up years, have down years.
Okay.
Well, we'll talk to Ed again, but we just barely talked to him Monday about that, because you asked last week, or last meeting.
Yep.
So we said we need this as soon as you can get it.
Yep. Put him on the schedule for.
First meeting. First meeting in January? Or you want?
I think you need him, I think he needs to be on the schedule next week.
We can get him to come, and he'll give you what he can give you.
Yeah,
Yeah, we should
and,
be- we
but,
should
you know, I mean, like we were
find
talked
out.
about in September when he came here, it's like, well, I would rather have thought that we were going to have a $6 million devaluation of the dams than no devaluation at all. It'd be better to be $2 million off than $8 million.
We'll, I'm sure we'll do our best to get him here next Monday night.
I mean, obviously, you know utilities way more than all of us put together. Is that reasonable that he can come in and give us a ballpark figure this month that is going to certainly get us closer than no number at all?
I'm not sure what he has in hand from the state or from Green Mountain Power.
He said that Green Mountain,
production.
didn't he? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought he said that Green Mountain Power has to file a report with the state.
Yes.
They don't do it till after the first of the year.
Oh, they want to.
Right, but
see
they-
the December generation.
Right.
Right, but they don't produce power on one day out of the year, that, you know,
So
so I
you
mean,
can-
we can get the
Right.
the
Hey, Green
average.
Mountain Power, give us a ballpark, but
Yeah, they can tell us what they've done so far, and then we can,
Throw out a number at that.
you know, compare that against last year and previous years, and
we'll get him here.
come up with
No,
a.
I get it. Ed to be here next week. Okay. All right, we can do that.
And you know, I'd say the same thing if he was sitting here and if he's watching, hello, but he works for us. I don't like him telling us, to us what his schedule is going to be, and.
He wasn't really, he said he's available, he just said that he would have the information by then. so-
Right, but being in the business as long as he has, he knows that that's too little too late.
Okay. All right, and we'll do what we gotta do to track down whatever. Okay.
And again, I know it's not gonna be a perfect number, but it's going to be closer than
A
nothing.
number.
It's better than.
Honestly, you can, if you're gonna reach out to GNP, you can get the last 12 months,
Okay,
which will have previous December, and then you're just dealing with the variance that
Okay.
you might get this December.
well, we can do that. All right,
I don't even know if you have the time or capacity, but is that a lingo question that you'd be able to get in about 2 seconds versus staff here in 2 days, or?
I might be
Is
able
that-
to, yeah.
I don't
if you
know.
could, that'd be very helpful. I mean, I can get hold of Robert Dostis, but if you can, he was here last week. Okay,
I can reach out.
thank you. That'll be good. And we'll get Ed. So,
I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but might as well use the expert capacity that we have.
While he's still here.
Yeah.
Hey, I still got his phone number. I can text him. I'll text you from the meeting, Ken.
I'll probably
Hey,
be
Ken.
more available after March than less.
Yeah.
Well, good.
Monday's free.
Then,
Yeah.
no,
We still got
You
applications.
already got the petition
Yeah.
filled out.
We went around Friday.
Yeah.
What's 3 more years, Ken?
And my last question, I think, from tonight is, why do we still have IT being managed out of the clerk's or treasurer's office?
Because we have the same person who's been doing it since the beginning of time.
Yeah,
That's the
and it's
real-
not a dig on.
No.
It's just.
No, it's not. But I can tell you, I understand your question. She has been working with Jess
Mhm.
and John on some stuff, more Jess, I think.
Yep.
But John has been involved in that,
Mhm.
and we are planning, to change over, but it's one of those things she's been doing and does a good job at it.
Yep, no
And,
doubt.
But,
But it's not a good long-term plan, given.
no, well, that's why we've been,
Yeah.
that's why
Yeah.
she's been sharing.
And I, no matter what, having an appointee of an elected official
Right.
be in charge of IT is just a bad
Mhm.
idea. Luckily, we have Paulette, and that's not an issue.
Right.
But we're not always going to.
Well, going forward, it will be different,
Right.
but I haven't pushed that. I mean, other than, anything we need, she's very responsive.
Yeah, I
And she
know.
comes out on the weekend and
I mean,
if there's something
she
down.
knows, no doubt about it. No,
And we've been
not
cross-trained.
not an issue of faith in her capabilities, it's just, it's not a good plan.
Yep. And we've been cross-training on lots of things. I've been cross-training with her. It's just been an issue of capacity for me, really, at times trying to,
And I know John has done some of it, I mean, some of the, like, the IT stuff, not the managed, Paulette does the tech group pretty much exclusively,
Mhm.
but we definitely need to.
I mean, the tech group does most of the work.
Yes.
right,
It's
but
just-
I've been doing a lot with the programs, so NEMRIC. And I actually was in touch with Ernie today, and we're gonna have him come in after the year and kind of wrap that into the cloud discussions that we're having.
And I think computers are actually already part of,
I don't think they were, but I put a note to add them.
Yeah, I've got it in here too.
yeah.
Yeah. Because we bought them from Costco. and
I
all that
got
stuff.
the, right, but I do think that we
Oh,
added
added
their
them to the-
service last
Okay.
year.
Okay.
I might be wrong, but
I
like,
don't think they were.
I got the same notice tonight, so I don't even
Okay.
want to
Same thing.
use this computer anymore until
If you wanna
we get
leave
enough
them.
spam on it with the
I'm pretty sure
protections.
they
Until we lock it down.
came with a
Yeah.
1 year, in fact, it's McAfee, I think it is. What does the town virus, what protection does the town have? What brand?
I don't honestly even know.
Not McAfee though, right?
No, it's
No.
not,
Yeah, I
it's a
don't think it
different
was.
thing.
And that's what's expiring. So
Right.
I think each one came with a 1 year on it.
Yep.
And you've also got one somewhere else too, right? Because you turned yours in.
Yeah,
Brenda has it.
Brenda has his.
Well,
We
there's still,
didn't,
there's
we
still
only
one.
had 4.
Subscription.
We only bought
We bought
4.
5.
Oh, that's right.
We only bought,
John didn't want
John
it.
didn't
Oh,
want
right,
it.
right, right.
So we only bought 4.
So it's 4 of them.
Yeah, and then Brenda got Ken's. so-
Okay.
We will need to, I mean,
Yeah,
unless
because
you.
it's McAfee.
So
it's-
I know for a fact that these computers aren't covered
Okay.
because the tech group Tuesday nights does their updates on all machines, and we couldn't do that with yours without you leaving them here every Tuesday night on the network for tech group to
Well, la-di-da.
get to.
We'll
Well,
fix you up though.
then
So
We gotta
find
have
out-
somebody needs to figure out how to
We'll get it done.
get the, yeah.
Need to change your approach.
I like my little.
Mine updates whenever I plug in.
I like
Is
my
it
little
really?
service, man.
Yeah, I don't.
They get angry with me when I go like for a conference or vacation and I'm off the
It's all
network for a couple
automated,
weeks.
so when they do our backup, it
Oh, and then it-
also pushes out any
Catches
updates
up, yeah.
Yep.
to the systems. Part of our disaster recovery plan that we have.
Okay.
But I'll talk to Paulette tomorrow and find out how to work around it.
Not a big deal. I just got an email from a nice lady in Somalia who wants to take care of my IT services. So I'm all set. Yeah.
Oh, you mean. I get more,
Group discount.
I get more spam on the town email.
Oh my God,
account
yeah.
Than get all of my other ones put together.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they've got your spam protection. thing.
That's, yeah,
Well, through the town email,
Yeah.
supposedly. I get
Yeah.
a lot of that.
Yeah. I got tons of revenue opportunities from the town.
Oh, absolutely. I gotta do a sign here. I mean, $1 million here, $1 million there.
You guys
Took
are,
care of our tax problems.
Yep. Give,
that would be nice.
Thank
Bird's social security number, and we'll be all set. Anything else?
The light up thing was good the other day.
Yeah.
The lighting of the Christmas tree was very well attended. You guys were there. It was a great event.
Back
I think it
on
makes sense
our
here.
turf.
It worked out really well.
I did hear from Fred today at Sullivan Powers. The audit is on his desk. He will be in the process of reviewing it, so I should have it by the end of this week, early next week. So as soon as I get that, I'll take a quick pass through it and then forward it on to you guys. He is scheduled to be here at the January 7th meeting.
And there's no I can't remember what it is.
No findings of material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. So we have
What we
another
wanted to hear.
good
Right.
audit.
A magic words.
Yes.
And I can never remember
Never
those 4
remember.
words. But she's job security, right?
Yeah.
Just so everybody's aware, I will not be here at the 7th meeting. I'll be in Key West.
Oh, come on.
Nice.
You can participate by phone.
You probably couldn't have picked a colder month to go either, huh?
Does that work too?
I participated
Jeez.
from sandy,
He's got the deal, yeah.
sandy locations.
It's a work,
before.
it's a work thing. It's a work
Yeah,
thing.
I know.
Motion to adjourn?
Yeah, unless anybody has any questions.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it.
Thank you very much.
Dan.
All right.
We won't give you any more nights off, so you go buy